tearful then.
Well, the people are very fond of you, but great outpouring of love and affection and admiration for what you're going to do.
And I'm going to, honestly, I mean, I'm not leaving GB News, let's just be clear. I am going to be hosting a show Monday to Thursday. You're going to be seeing me all over every show. Hopefully I'll be popping up here and there. I'll do some exclusive bits for Andrew here. I'll send
Thought you'd say that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. Coming up on the show today.
Involved is probably not really fit to be trusted with major affairs of state.
I think she's tried to game the system, as the phrase has it, and she's been found out.
Is Angela Rayner on political death row? The under-fire Deputy PM could be dealt to a fate by the PM's ethics watchdog later on today. Will Keir Starmer stand by his deputy, or would he throw a sacrificial lamb to the pack? On today's show, I'll be joined by an unlikely defender of Miss Rayner, former Tory MP and GB News presenter Miriam Cates. And also coming up on today's show...
At what point did we become North Korea?
Nigel Farage claims the UK is turning into North Korea, with mother Lucy Connolly jailed for a Facebook post, comedian Graham Linehan arrested for trans tweets, and a Tony Blair digital ID coming. Is he right? And shocking new Home Office data seen exclusively by GB News has shown an astonishing 40% of all asylum seekers claiming to be unaccompanied children are actually adults. It's the asylum scandal of the year. And on today's show, I'll speak to experts who will tell me it's time to biometrically age all asylum seekers and deport the fake children. And legendary Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91, and we're paying tribute to him throughout the show, and that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Will it be curtains for Angela Rayner? We could find out during today's show, and an astonishing report from our friends at Stand Up for Our Sovereignty has shown the Home Office data they did not want you to see, but we've whittled it out of them. 40%, an astonishing 40% of everybody coming over on a dinghy claiming to be an unaccompanied child are actually adults. Some of them are aged 23 with full beards, hairy legs, hairy chests, receding hair, and they're actually claiming to be 16 years old. And here's the real insanity. Then the judges can overrule the Home Office, and they have to be paid compensation. Compensation you, the British taxpayer, are paying for. It's an absolute scandal. We've got the full detail and the breakdown and the sheer volume of people pretending to be children under Keir Starmer. And let's talk about some answers. Is it time to age check everybody coming in? No more namby-panding about, no more worrying about the human rights lawyers. Let's age check them all, and if they're faking, get them straight out of the country. Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so. Now it's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock, well, Angela Rayner is facing fresh calls to quit today after admitting she underpaid £40,000 in stamp duty on a flat in Hove. The Deputy Prime Minister says it was an inadvertent mistake, but the Conservatives have written to HMRC demanding an investigation, with Tory party chairman Kevin Hollinrake insisting she should resign. Well, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said she does have full confidence in Ms Rayner, as the Deputy Prime Minister is facing an ethics probe now after admitting she made that underpayment on the seaside flat.
I have full confidence in Angela Rayner. She's a good friend and a colleague. She has accepted the right stamp duty wasn't paid. That was an error. That was a mistake. She is working hard now to rectify that.
It comes as graffiti branding Ms Rayner as a tax evader appeared outside that property. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has condemned the vandalism in the strongest possible terms. Father Ted creator Graham Linehan's post about a transgender activist were oppressive and vindictive, a court has heard today. The court also heard how Mr Linehan deliberately whacked a phone out of an activist's hand. The 57-year-old is facing trial accused of harassing transgender activist Sophia Brooks. He's denied one count of harassment on social media in October last year and a further charge of criminal damage of her mobile phone. But today, the prosecutor said Linehan's posted about the activity relentlessly. Writing in the Daily Mail on Thursday, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch said Mr Linehan's arrest showed values of free speech are being slowly eroded, adding that it's by people weaponising the law and using it for petty squabbling. Nigel Farage has posted an image of himself with Donald Trump amid the Reform UK leader's trip to the United States. He's been in Washington to give evidence to the House Judiciary Committee on Capitol Hill. At a hearing yesterday, Mr Farage likened Britain to North Korea over the UK's approach to civil liberties. He raised the arrest of Irish writer Linehan for comments on social media about trans people and the jailing of former childminder and wife of a Conservative councillor, Lucy Connolly, for a post she made about asylum seekers in the aftermath of the Southport murders last year. The trial of Hadosh Kabatu will shortly hear closing statements at Chelmsford Magistrates Court. The asylum seeker, Ethiopian national, accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. He is alleged to have attempted to kiss the teenager, put his hand on her thigh and brushed her hair in July after she offered him pizza. An adult member of the public also accuses Kabatu of trying to kiss her, putting his hand on her leg and telling her she was pretty just days after he arrived in the UK on a small boat. He denies the alleged incidents near the Bell Hotel in Epping in Essex and previously told the court he is not a wild animal. In London, 17 people have been injured, with most taken to hospital after a bus struck pedestrians on a busy street in the capital. The driver of the Route 24 bus was among those hurt after the crash on Victoria Street around 9:20 this morning. There were no life-threatening injuries reported. And legendary fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91. The Italian style icon built a global empire that redefined modern elegance, blending sharp tailoring with business acumen to grow a company worth billions. Armani's name became synonymous with understated luxury, dressing Hollywood stars and power players alike. His death was confirmed by the Armani Group today, which said the industry has lost one of its most visionary figures. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back in half an hour. Next, though, let's take a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews financial report.
Well, the pound will buy you $1.3450 and €1.1543 euros. The price of gold is £2,639.97 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,198 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews financial report.
Thank you, Sam Francis. Now, tick-tock. Angela Rayner is battling for her political future as pressure continues to grow over the stamp duty scandal. Overnight, her £800,000 seaside flat in Hove was vandalised, with graffiti branding her a tax evader and other abusive words. Now, offensive messages were daubed across walls and hoardings near the Deputy PM's new apartment. Though it is understood that she was not there at the time, well, we've been out and about, and we've asked the public, the great British public, whether it's time for the Deputy Prime Minister to go.
I think if she can't manage her own affairs or delegate somebody that she makes sure is capable of managing her own affairs, then that raises doubts about her general competence, and I think that applies in a lot of cases like this. It signals that the person involved is probably not really fit to be trusted with.
So I think we should wait and let the process follow through. I think it's more complicated than the quick clickbait headline.
Absolutely. I mean, she's the Deputy Prime Minister, and surely the standard expected of her is much higher.
Unfortunately, I think she should. Her position is now untenable. The people in authority should be white and white, and I think the laws are fairly clear.
Well, the court of public opinion, Ms Rayner is severely untroubled. And just to quickly add, hot off the press from our friends at Electoral Calculus, Martin Baxter, who's on the show later on, has sent me a poll. Should Rayner go? Only 15% say she should remain in her post. People, they seem to have had enough of the under-fire Deputy Prime Minister. Let's get the opinions now of GBNews' political correspondent Catherine Forster, who joins me in the studio in Westminster. The storm clouds have not only gathered, they are thundering down on Angela Rayner. Where is she taking shelter and what's the latest?
Well, today she's at a very, very lovely house indeed, Chatsworth House, of course, beautiful 17th century stately home. She's there for a meeting of the regional mayors. Now, our mole who is there has told GB News that apparently she's on remarkably good form. Of course, she's maybe putting on a brave face, but, you know, she looked very unhappy. Well, we saw her tearful yesterday in the interview, didn't we? But look, this is a political nightmare for Labour, whichever way it goes, because as John Curtis told GB News this morning, the renowned pollster, there is a real risk of tarnishing the party. And if Laurie Magnus, the Standards Commissioner, who we understand may give his verdict as soon as tomorrow, he's due to go on holiday on Saturday, apparently, so we may get a verdict quickly. If he finds that she's breached the ministerial code, I can't see any world in which the Prime Minister can hang on to her. But if he doesn't go that far, I suspect the Prime Minister will try to keep her. But whichever way, there's going to be so many voters, as we heard there, that think for all her difficult circumstances, for all the obviously awful situation that she has with a very severely disabled child, her marriage breakdown and so on and so forth. The bottom line is we have a housing secretary who is underpaid stamp duty by £40,000 at a time where the Chancellor is likely to put a whole load of taxes up, including on property.
Catherine Forster, everybody is saying if she goes, where will she go from? She has 3 posts. Of course, she's an MP and on the back benches. She's the Housing Minister and she's the Deputy Prime Minister, the Deputy Leader. Jacob Rees-Mogg told me last night an astonishing point. If she goes or resigns as Deputy Leader, it then goes to the membership. Remember, Angela Rayner was foisted Sir Keir Starmer's way. He probably didn't want Angela Rayner to be his deputy. The most popular minister by a country mile now, if you look on Labour lists, which is the thermometer of Labour, is Ed Miliband. He's more than twice as popular as his nearest rival, Hilary Benn. Could we see an astonishing situation where Ed Miliband could come back from the dead and could be the next deputy leader of the Labour Party?
Well, that is certainly possible in that it is the membership who would decide who the deputy leader of Labour is. And as you say, he's streets ahead of everybody else. Angela Rayner is a darling of the left of the party. And as you know, a couple of years ago, the Prime Minister tried to get rid of her, tried to reshuffle her out and ended up giving her a whole load of other jobs. So she won that one. But in terms of her posts within government, he could very well get rid of her as Deputy Prime Minister. You do not have to have a Deputy Prime Minister. Prime Ministers often don't. So that is simple. He could simply not replace that post. Also, of course, given that she's not paid tax on housing, surely she'd have to lose the Housing Secretary job as well. But, you know, she could make so much trouble for him on the back benches. And also Jeremy Corbyn, remember him, who's founding a new party.
The door's open, he said.
This morning has said, indeed, that the door is open, though I think that would be, I mean, never say never, but I wouldn't think that was very likely.
So 3 pads, Rayner, as some people are calling her, has 3 posts in the Labour Party. It's unlikely she'd be able to keep the deputy's job if the Ethics Committee find against her. Where does this leave the Labour Party? Because the point now is we're looking forward to this November the 26th budget. It's all about more taxation. It's all about British taxpayers who are feeling the pinch, being told they must pay their way when a deputy leader is seeming to not pay their way. It creates a huge headache. It's a reputational problem. It's a financial problem. Could it derail the entire party?
Well, look, they're in a huge hole already. In their first year, they managed to make themselves massively unpopular, beginning with the Freebie Gate scandal and sort of talking Britain down, the doom and the gloom, and only going downhill from there. And, of course, Angela Rayner and the Labour Party more broadly, when they were in opposition, did take a very holier-than-thou approach, calling out bad behaviour of various Conservative ministers, not waiting until the Standards Minister reported, but just presiding, judging, saying this person should go, this is disgraceful, we will come in, we will clean up politics. If she goes, of course, she'll only be the latest in a long line because the Transport Minister had to go, the Homelessness Minister had to go, the City Minister had to go. You know, this was supposed to be, the Prime Minister told us back on Monday, feels like ages ago now, that this was the beginning of a new phase. They wanted to get back on the front foot. It's not happening at the moment.
And a further allegation this morning that Angela Rayner received over £1,000 worth of complimentary Pride tickets to Brighton Pride, reigniting that freebie gate scandal. Catherine, I know we need to let you go. You're going to hot-foot it all the way now to Birmingham, to the Reform Conference on you. I know you're busy. Let's get you out of here, and we'll see more of you tomorrow. Catherine, excellent this week, as ever. Let's get to my next guest now to get the perspective from a farmer. I'm joined by the farmer, Douglas Turner. Douglas, welcome to the show. I wanted to get you on today because farmers have been seen as one of the great losers under the Labour Party, certainly financially. Everyone, we're told, has to pay their fair share. Everybody, it would seem, potentially, except the Deputy Prime Minister.
Exactly. As Jeremy Clarkson tweeted, or X, whatever you want to call it these days, earlier, that she can look after her children, but farmers can't look after their children, which is doubly unfair. But it just goes to prove the point that this government are only there for their own self-interest. They're not there for our interest. But in fact, they're so bad, I understand this weekend that all mobile phones are going to get a siren warning that they are still in government, which we need to have them gone. Lester Piggott lost his knighthood for what he did with HMRC. Angela Rayner should lose her position and her house as well, because she's actually taken advantage of the situation of where she is in her position, which is totally wrong.
Now, Douglas Turner, of course, we must wait for the full outcome of the Ethics Committee and for the full facts to be borne out. And I'm duty-bound to say that because, you know, that's the deal. And that's why the Labour Party themselves are being tight-lipped today. But nevertheless, looking ahead, we're surely going to get yet more pain in the budget on November the 26th. By the way, that's the latest possible date. Kwasi Kwarteng had on the show last night. He said they're pushing it back as late as possible because it's going to be major, major pain, and particularly, Douglas, within the farming sector. Are many people now thinking, what's the point in digging for Britain?
Absolutely, but then surely that's their whole game plan. Because before the last budget, they had Bill Gates and Larry Fink from BlackRock in, so that farmers would go out of business and then they could buy all the land up cheap. And then they've got control. Then you've got Tony Blair wanting everybody to have digital ID. So where we spend our money, where we go, they can control us. We've got people being arrested for tweets and different things. But when we've got the really serious things, which fortunately GBNews has highlighted, with the Pakistani rape gangs, they don't seem to do much about it. But really, Martin, if you're in government, you should be cleaner than clean. You shouldn't be pulling these strokes all the time because you're getting away with it. And I heard that Rayner was very happy today in her meeting because she thinks she's got away with it. And the last thing we want is her to go and Ed Single Brain Cell to be in there because he's on about it's blowing in the wind. Well, all the hot air that comes from him should surely be able to make the heating work. If we open the windows at the House of Commons, everything that comes out of there is hot air. They say that they have a big deficit, but they keep giving our money away, and it's our money they're giving away, not theirs.
Douglas Turner, an amusing quip there towards Ed Miliband. You know, let's keep this gentlemanly. But on a serious point, could I get your reaction to the Electoral Calculus poll, hot off the press, given to us here at GB News? Only 15% of the electorate have faith in Angela Rayner. Who do you think those 15% are?
I would think they're going to be their own voters that they want to have in all the time, because I speak to many people from all walks of life. No one wants the Labour government to be in there. Unfortunately, we're stuck with them. The King's not going to stop it. Keir Starmer's not going to stop it. He seems to revel in it. And the more they do bad to us, the worse they become.
Well, Douglas Turner, straight from the heart there. Thank you very, very much for taking a break from the farm and joining us on GB News. I appreciate your forthright opinions. I sincerely do. Douglas Turner, mind how you go. Thank you very, very much indeed. Wow. Now, strong feelings out there. Moving on, time for our latest Great British giveaway now, and it's our biggest prize to date, worth over £104,000. You could win also a 4-berth motorhome worth 74 grand, plus a whopping 30 grand in tax-free, cool, hard moolah. And here's Hayley Sparks with all of the details.
It's our biggest, greatest Great British giveaway to date. Your chance to win a prize package worth over £104,000. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primero motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas, sky view roof light, and has all the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure any adventures in your motorhome are taken in style.
For a chance to win the motorhome and cash, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, still to come on today's show.
At what point did we become North Korea?
Nigel Farage claims the UK is turning into North Korea, with mother Lucy Connolly jailed for a Facebook post, comedian Graham Linehan arrested for trans tweets, and a Tony Blair-backed digital ID incoming. Is he right? And next, shocking new Home Office data seen exclusively by GB News has shown that 40% of all asylum seekers claiming to be unaccompanied children are actually adults. It's the asylum scandal of the year. More on that in just a moment with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 3:24. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, prepare yourselves for the asylum scandal of the year. New Home Office data seen exclusively by GB News has shown that 40% of all asylum seekers claiming to be unaccompanied children are actually adults. And today I'm asking the big question, is it time to biometrically age all asylum seekers and then deport these so-called fake children? Well, I'm joined in the studio by the man behind this research, Ben Phillips. Ben, of course, you're the comms director and the vice chairman of Stand for Our Sovereignty. By the way, Stand for Our Sovereignty, get out there, give them a follow. They well deserve your backing.
Thank you,
Ben. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've got a few charts to talk us through. The first one shows us the breakdown of the age groups who arrive in our country, and that details how many of them claim to be under 18. Over to you.
There we are. So the first chart, Martin, is to the end of June 2025, from 2024 to 2025. And the chart shows the age breakdown, as we say, 17 and under, 18 to 24, 25 to 39 and 40 and over. So 17 and under, we just got over 5,000 or 12% of the total. 18 to 24, a big jump, as you see, to nearly 15,000. 34.5%, and then another jump again to nearly 20,000, 45%, and then it falls back down to over.
Good. So we can see in terms of their claims, 12% of them, 5,107, are claiming to be aged under 18. Now we have your next chart, and the big question is, why would anybody claim to be under 18? Apart from the fact, obviously, they get preferential treatment, they're more likely to succeed in their claim being granted. Talk us through the numbers, they're astonishing.
There we are. Well, this is the kernel of the whole thing. If you are unaccompanied and you can claim to be under 18, you are nearly 50% more likely to be approved for your claim than if you're over 18. And again, we've got the data to show that.
There it is on screen now. Talk us through that, Ben.
Look at that. Unaccompanied under 18's approval rate, 84%, an astonishing number. So no wonder there's such a pressure for people to apply.
You're more or less guaranteed to be granted asylum if you claim to be under 18.
That's right.
OK, that's the point.
There we are. As opposed to those aged 18 to 24, 56.5%. So in other words, there's a nearly 50% differential between the two.
So you're 50% more likely to be granted if you claim to be a child.
Correct.
And you're 84% likely to be granted asylum if you say you are a child, and that means you're much more likely to remain in the country and get preferential treatment in terms of housing, in terms of service provision, because you're treated as a fragile minor.
Correct.
Now let's get to the real number bit. The actual bombshell of your report. How many of them are fakes? How many are pretending to be children?
Well, this is it. Now, just important to say, Martin, this data is up to June of 24, so it's a year old, and we are working on getting the data up to 25, and who knows what those figures might be.
But this is the latest possible data. It's hot off the press.
That's correct.
Good.
Now, those claiming to be under 18, the actual total is just over 4,700, of which 2,854 were accepted as being 17 or under. So that's up there on the chart. But look at that, 1,873, nearly 40% who claimed to be under 18 were actually over 18.
So, Ben Phillips, let's just spell this out with total clarity. 40% of those people who arrive in Britain seeking asylum who are claiming to be children aren't. They're
correct.
adults.
They are.
40% are adults. This is an absolute and utter scandal. And it gets worse because this could be the tip of the iceberg. And tell us why.
Well, I mean, as I say, this is data from last year. So what on earth might the figures be for the end of June of 2025?
And we also know that when the Home Office perceives there to be if you like, a fake child, has to take 2 officers to verify that.
That's right.
And if that case then is proven to be incorrect, there have been astonishing cases, Ben Phillips, where the Home Office, the taxpayer, has to pay tens of thousands of pounds in compensation for the hurt feelings and the legal costs of children. It's just an absolute mind-bending case. And there have been cases where there have been men with beards, receding hair, hairy chests, 6'4" strapping lads.
That's right.
Who are claiming to be 16. They're biometrically aged as being 23, and judges are overturning it and saying that they are in fact 16. It's a total farce.
Absolute farce. You wouldn't believe it unless it had actually happened, and this is what's going on, Martin. And a Freedom of Information request to the Home Office in 2022 revealed 52 unaccompanied children were actually over the age of 30. So it's just one of multiple examples of abuse that's taking place.
It's almost funny.
It is.
It's almost funny, but it's not. And another huge stat that came out of this, in the last 2 years, for which there is data to June 2024, over 3,500 fake child migrants have been caught. Ben Phillips, a lot of people will be asking the question, it's time to end this nonsense, it's time to compulsory age check everybody and anybody coming in the country. They're about to do that for girls and children refugees getting NHS care. Surely your report tells us everybody should be age-checked and perhaps deported if they're frauds.
Well, they are, and biometric testing takes place across the EU under the sanction of the ECHR. Why aren't we doing it over here? We're behind we are just a soft touch. We are a laughing stock for the rest of the world, Martin.
You're absolutely right. It happens in Austria, it happens in a lot of European nations. No problems there with human rights. They're in the ECHR, they're in the European Union.
There are.
But we won't do it here, and your report crystallises perfectly. We are an absolute laughing stock.
Yeah. Just one other thing to say. This is also an issue of public safety. Because if you've got these young men coming over here, aged 18 to 24, being integrated into local communities, sitting in classrooms with English children, English teenagers aged 13 to 16, is it any wonder that local residents and parents up and down the land are absolutely sick with worry?
You're absolutely right to point that out. And there was, in fact, a case in 2018, I believe, where a 23-year-old child was placed in school in Ipswich with 15-year-olds, and one of the kids said, he's older than the teacher. It's an absolute farce, and it's a fantastic report once again. Thank you so much, our friends at Stand For Our Sovereignty. Ben Phillips for coming in once again. Please keep them coming. And as I repeat, get out there and get onto the Stand For Our Sovereignty website. Give these guys support. They are doing God's work. Ben Phillips, superb as ever. Thank you very, very much indeed. There's lots more still to come now between now and 4 o'clock, including Nigel Farage, who has claimed that the UK is turning into North Korea. Well, with mother Lucy Connolly jailed for a Facebook post, comedian Graham Linehan arrested for trans tweets, and a Tony Blair-backed digital ID incoming. Is a reform leader right? But first, it's time for somebody who's definitely right. It's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 3:30, the top story this hour. Fashion icon Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91. The man behind red carpet glamour and power dressing worked until his final days. His label calling him the tireless driving force of modern fashion. Sir Keir Starmer has condemned graffiti sprayed near Angela Rayner's home, calling it appalling. The Deputy Prime Minister faces mounting pressure after admitting she underpaid stamp duty on her £800,000 flat, with a ruling from the Prime Minister's Standards Advisor expected within days. Father Ted creator Graham Linehan is on trial in London, accused of harassing an 18-year-old transgender activist. Prosecutors say his social media posts were oppressive and vindictive. He, though, denies the charges. And 17 people have been injured, with most taken to hospital after a bus struck pedestrians on a busy London street near Victoria Station. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with a full roundup at the top of the hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some very heavy rain places today. Tomorrow, a lot calmer. The winds will be lighter, particularly in the south, and most of us will have a dry day. It's been far from that today over parts of the Midlands, northern England, but out of very heavy rain, some thunderstorms around too. It is now pulling out into the North Sea. We'll keep a few showers going through the nights, parts of Wales, western Scotland, the odd one for northwest England and Northern Ireland, but Most places will become dry, long clear spells. A bit cooler than last night as well. Temperatures, certainly rural spots, well down into single figures. So a fresh but fine start to Friday. For most of us, there'll be some sunshine around tomorrow. Still enough of a breeze to bring in a few showers coming into the Highlands, the Western Isles, maybe the Northern Isles of Scotland, but most places will have a dry and fine start. Again, the odd shower coming into the north and the west of Northern Ireland, perhaps northwest England too, but the majority for England and Wales, fine, bright start with some decent spells of sunshine, but it will be just a little bit cooler than it has been. Now, as you go through the day, some cloud will bubble up a little bit, and we'll see maybe the odd shower again developing northwest England, west coast of Wales. The cloud will increase over the Western Isles and some patchy rain is possible here late in the day. The winds lighter than today, certainly across the south you'll notice that difference, and as a result feeling quite a bit warmer. Temperatures maybe a smidge above the average, high teens generally, maybe into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. 22 is possible. High pressure promises some fine weather for most of us on Saturday, quite a warm day as well, but look at this, a deepening area of low pressure, the isobars squidging together, so quite a change for Sunday. It's going to be a weekend of two halves really, dry for most with hazy sunshine on Saturday, but for Sunday that weather system will turn things wet and windy. The humidity will be picking up through the weekend as well. That's all from me for now. Goodbye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M5 southbound between junctions 9 and 10, an accident causes delays. In Leeds, a broken down vehicle on the M1 southbound at junction 41 leads to congestion with one lane closed. In Warwickshire, congestion on the A46 northbound between the A435 and A422 causes minor delays. On the M5 southbound between junctions 9 and 11 in Gloucestershire, a collision disrupts traffic. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway sees delays between Bedford and Luton Airport Parkway, while Great Western Railway reports disruptions to and from Penzance. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Time is 3:36. With me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, compared Britain to North Korea when facing questions about the UK's approach to free speech in DC yesterday. Now, he was discussing the Metropolitan Police's arrest of Father Ted co-founder of the Irish National, Graham Linehan, when he said this.
This could happen to any American man or woman that goes to Heathrow that has said things online that the British government and British police don't like. It is a potentially big threat to tech bosses, to many, many others. This legislation we've got will damage trade between our countries, threaten free speech across the West because of the knock-on roll-out effects of this legislation from us or from the European Union. So I've come today as well to be a klaxon, to say to you, don't allow, piece by piece, this to happen here in America. And you would be doing us and yourselves and all freedom-loving people a favour if your politicians and your businesses said to the British government, you've simply got this wrong. At what point did we become North Korea?
Well, that was Nigel Farage. They're calling him now the Klaxon from Clacton. And joining us now is the host of the Fire at Will podcast, Will Kingston. Will, welcome to the show. Lucy Connolly being banged up for a Facebook post. Graham Linehan getting 5 armed coppers haranguing him at Heathrow. Tony Blair trammelling us towards digital ID for all. Do you think Nigel Farage has a point?
Yeah, of course he has a point. I'm not taking him entirely literally, Martin, but he's pointing to something very serious and very real, and that is this authoritarian instinct in the United Kingdom. The thing with the Linehan situation is I've heard politicians across the spectrum now, including Starmer, say that this is unacceptable, telling the police to focus on real things, but I haven't heard one yet saying what are they going to do about it. I haven't heard one person talk about the Public Order Act. I haven't heard one person talk further about non-crime hate incidents. It's all very well and good for politicians in this country to talk about the problems with free speech, but until we actually hear about how the free speech regime is going to change, I remain very sceptical that this authoritarian moment will pass.
Now, of course, it is important to have a bit of fun and keep things in context. Nobody's suggesting that we live under a Kim Jong-un style military dictatorship, at least not yet. There I go. But the point is, we seem to be on a direction of travel where basic civil liberties are being eroded. The right to protest, if it's the wrong kind of protest, if it's the right kind of protest, no problemo. You can clamber all over war memorials, you can set fire to flags at the cenotaph, you can vandalise London if you belong to a certain tranche. If you belong to a different one, then you're going to taste a bit of baton and you're going to get arrested for your tweets instead of policing the streets. And all the while, measures to counteract this, changing the law, seem to be falling on deaf ears with the Prime Minister. Do you think anything's going to get better or will it get worse, Will?
I don't think anything's going to get better under this government, Martin, because suppression of speech is core to the leftist mission, not just in Labor, but across the Western world. And I think this is something, the Conservatives are desperately searching for a mission at the moment. They're being outflanked on the right by Reform. They're struggling to make a dent on Starmer, which really does say something. Why don't they take up free speech as something which is a cause to pursue? This is something which is the underpinning of every other policy decision that gets made in this country. And I would really like to hear the Conservatives and Kemi Badenoch come out strongly, say we're going to rip up these, incitement to racial hatred, incitement to violence laws under the Public Order Act, and actually champion this, because that is what a Conservative right-wing political party should be doing.
Well, is it fair? Of course, the Labour Party were spitting feathers yesterday at PMQs. Nigel Farage wasn't in Westminster, he was in Washington. Do you think they have a point? Should Nigel Farage be overseas, seemingly, in their opinion, undermining English, British democracy? Or actually are things so grave now it needs to be shouted about on the world stage?
It really irritates me when I hear that people like Farage are talking down the country. He's not talking down the country. He's not talking down the green fields and the pubs and the English football team. He's talking down how the country is being run. And that definitely does deserve international attention. And from what we've seen, America and people like Musk and people like Trump, when they've got involved in issues in the UK, have played an important role in pushing those things forward. Musk's intervention in the grooming gangs is a really good example where that accelerated progress on that particular area. So I think it's a really good thing what he's doing, because hopefully it will make the Labor Party less complacent and put more pressure on them to actually do something on this very important issue.
Now, of course, Nigel Farage, a lot of people from the political right complained like heck when Barack Obama came to Britain and said we'd be at the back of the queue with Brexit. You're exactly right to point out that the rape gang scandal, a story which had been trying to be buried by the political establishment, by the media elites for years and years, if not decades, suddenly blew up because Elon Musk got involved. And there's a particular pertinence there, Will Kingston, because the European Union, they want to get their hands, they want to censor big tech, they want to fine big tech. That, of course, is American tech. And if people are getting put in jail who are Irish in Britain because of what things they say on American platforms, the Americans have every right to know about it.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, they've got their First Amendment, which I'm incredibly jealous of in this country. We certainly don't have something like that. The other thing that needs to be remembered is that the other accountability mechanisms in this country are not working. They're not holding the feet to the fire for the Labor Party. Kemi Badenoch was woeful in Question Time yesterday. She's not pressuring Starmer. The media, apart from GBNews, are not doing a good enough job of bringing these issues to the forefront. So I think Farage, what he's doing is he's finding alternative ways to actually hold this government to account. And I think that can only be a good thing.
Will Kingston, something that struck me yesterday, I think a lot of people in America don't know anything about this, and why would they? They have their own woes, they have their own country, they have immigration issues to worry about there too. But I really got a sense yesterday that people were astonished that people in Britain are being jailed for what they say on social media, and in particular there was a gasp, you could hear it yesterday, when it was mentioned that the new definition of Islamophobia that's coming to Britain will give what Nigel Farage said, two-tier protection to Islam. People in America were utterly gobsmacked that we're even contemplating such a thing.
Yeah, as they should be, because this country has done more than any other to promote liberty. This is the country of Magna Carta, as Farage pointed out yesterday. There is no United States freedoms without the United Kingdom. So I think the surprise comes from the fact that historically this country has championed freedom of speech, and it is very sad that it has lost that particular focus on it. We can only hope that we rediscover it. Unfortunately, I think it will take a new government in order to rediscover that passion for free speech and civil liberties.
Well, thank you for your forthright opinion today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. The host of the Fire at Will podcast, Will Kingston. Next time, we'll get here. We'll go for a pint afterwards.
Love to. Thank you,
Mark. Pleasure. Will, you take care. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, for Insurgents and Holiday Sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst it's feeling pretty autumnal across the UK at the moment, it's a different story across southern Europe. Lots of places having generally fine, often sunny and still pretty warm weather. That being said, across some eastern parts of Spain tomorrow, it's looking quite damp, and we do still have some heavy thundery rain across parts of northern Italy into Switzerland and Austria, even some snow over the Alps. Otherwise, like I said, lots of fine weather to be had, and that's the theme as we go through the weekend into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's a big 3,500-mile journey, but it's an international TV show, so there's going to be a good 10 to 12 film crew. But instead of hunting, gathering and survival, it's going to be mixed. We're going to be travelling this via land, air and sea, documenting the Yellow River. So it is going to be skydiving, paragliding, scuba diving, all the extremes that you can think of.
You've done paragliding, you've done skydiving before?
Yeah, I've got the licences. I've probably been working on it the past 10 to 15 years, to be honest.
Really?
The licences in sort of land, air and sea. And so this time round, we get to put it all in one as we show, you know, the mother river of China.
And how long will it take?
It will take probably about 2 months. So certainly longer than the Suriname journey, but not quite the Yangtze River.
And sleeping in what, tents?
Yeah, tents along the way. Yeah, we'll be cycling and kayaking as well. We'll be staying in a lot of different towns and cities along the way because there's a big film crew. So it's probably more luxurious than your survival in the Amazon, but certainly different kind of challenges.
And am I right in thinking you've got engaged since your last trip?
Yes.
And how does your beautiful Mrs-to-be feel about you doing this?
You know what? She's worried all the time with these different endeavours, but she's just so supportive. She loves it. She's like, you know, as long as you train and prepare and you're safe and you're not pressured with the film crew around you to do stuff that you wouldn't otherwise do, then you know, she has belief.
Can you? Are you allowed to keep in touch, or is it?
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah. So I'm looking to actually drop, like on Instagram and the rest of the social medias, a post every day. From source to sea, from day one all the way to the very end.
I was following you on Instagram and I was thinking, how is he able to do this from the middle of nowhere? Sometimes you can't get Wi-Fi in North Devon.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 3:48. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. I want to get back to a story we covered earlier on the show from our friends at Stand for Our Sovereignty, an exclusive on GB News today, an incredible report showing that 40% of asylum seekers claiming to be unaccompanied minors, claiming to be under 18, are actually adults. Now, this is a story that's been doing the rounds for years and years and years. This is Home Office data. This is the real deal. This isn't some conspiracy theory. 40% of everybody coming to Britain and claiming asylum is actually a fake. They're not under 18, they're adults. And some of them are aged 30. Some of them are being put in classrooms with children who are aged 15, but they're actually 30-year-old men with beards, with hairy chests, with hairy legs, with receding hairlines. And get this, one of those 23-year-old Sudanese asylum seekers who was biometrically tested by the Home Office, by 2 Home Office men, and the physical evidence was compelling and overwhelming. It claimed he was 23 years of age. It was overruled by a judge. And a judge said, no, actual fact, he agreed with the Sudanese lad, and he was 16. Then he was entitled to an 84% likelihood to get asylum seeker in this country. The entire thing is a farce. And I put it to you, it's time for compulsory biometric age testing of everybody who comes in this country. And if you're a fake, you should be deported. So we're going to cover that more later in the show. But a bit more of a light-hearted story now, because it looks like wallets and purses are going out of fashion, perhaps because none of us have got any cash to put in them. Well, a new study reveals that fewer than half of Britons now carry a wallet these days as smartphones and watches take over our payment methods. Young people are leading the charge, as you'd expect, but experts warn that our digital reliance leaves us at risk when tech fails. Well, I'm joined now by the etiquette expert, Diana Mather. Diana, always a pleasure to have your esteemed company. You're going to tell me, because I've got this thing here. I've got my smartphone, and I've got a card holder on the back. I've got a beautiful wallet. It's got a cheeky picture inside. It's a Paul Smith one. I never leave home with a wallet now. I simply leave it at home. Am I part of the problem?
Well, so am I, though, Martin. I do everything on my phone. I mean, I pay for everything. Sometimes that's all I walk out of the house with, apart from my lipstick, of course, because I do need that. But you're absolutely right. If something goes wrong, I'm a bit stymied. So my partner always carries cash. The cash is king as far as he is concerned, which is great, because then if I haven't got any, he has. But as it was said, actually, in Barcelona earlier this year, they lost power for really quite some time. And a friend of mine was there, and she said it was absolutely scary. They couldn't get anything. She couldn't pay for anything. She couldn't even get a cup of coffee or a loaf of bread because she didn't have cash.
Well, Diana, I'd expect your partner not only to carry cash, but to carry your fur coat, your scarf, and perhaps even carry you on the throne.
Yes, he certainly has me on the phone. But usually he doesn't. Usually I try and stay upright when we're together.
But on a serious point, this is a real trend. And as you'd imagine, it's young people who are leading the way. Only 11% of people leave home with just their digital wallets. Worth pointing out that a tap-in card, 70% is still the most preferable way of paying for stuff. But it does seem that we're on a slow, inexorable journey now towards wallets and purses simply becoming a thing of the past. And with that goes the death of cash.
I know, but you see, during COVID, we were all told not to use cash. And as somebody who always does what she's told, I haven't used cash since. So I think in that way, cash is pretty dirty. It's very heavy. It can make your handbag look really quite unattractive because, with bulges here, there and everywhere. Whereas with just your card wallet or just your phone, I have to say, I do prefer it.
Yeah, and do you know what? 7% of people, that's nearly 5% of Brits, they don't carry any cash at all with them when they leave home, when they go from home. And nearly 16 million people haven't got any cash at home. Now, maybe that's because actually we're feeling the pinch. I've got so many coins piled up in so many whiskey bottles, I don't know what to do with them. That probably says more about me than you. We'll have to leave it there, Diana Mather. It's always a pleasure to have your company. It sincerely is. Thank you. You always bring a smile to my face. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank
indeed
you so much, Martin.
For joining us
and you too.
Thank you very much. I just absolutely love that guest. I sincerely do. So still to come today could be the big day. The Wolves are circling for Angela Rayner, our embattled Deputy Prime Minister. Still to come, we'll discuss whether Angela Rayner is on the brink of resigning. We hear she's at a country house with all the regional mayors. One of those mayors, Andy Burnham, might want her job. And astonishing news, if this goes to the membership, if Angela Rayner is fired or steps down, guess who could become most likely the next deputy leader of the Labour Party? Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband could be back from the political dead to become the number 2. And if anything happens, he could be leading the Labour Party again. Be careful what you wish for. Ed Miliband could be number 2. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. First, though, it's time for your weather with Alex Deakin.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some very heavy rain in places today. Tomorrow, a lot calmer. The winds will be lighter, particularly in the south, and most of us will have a dry day. It's been far from that today over parts of the Midlands, northern England, but out of very heavy rain, some thunderstorms around too. It is now pulling out into the North Sea. We'll keep a few showers going through the nights, parts of Wales, western Scotland, the odd one for northwest England and Northern Ireland, but most places will become dry, long clear spells. A bit cooler than last night as well. Temperatures, certainly rural spots, well down into single figures. So a fresh but fine start to Friday. For most of us, there'll be some sunshine around tomorrow. Still enough of a breeze to bring in a few showers coming into the Highlands and the Western Isles, maybe the Northern Isles of Scotland, but most places will have a dry and fine start. Again, the odd shower coming into the north and the west of Northern Ireland, perhaps northwest England too, but the majority for England and Wales, fine, bright start with some decent spells of sunshine, but it will be just a little bit cooler than it has been. Now, as you go through the day, some cloud will bubble up a little bit, and we'll see maybe the odd shower again developing northwest England, west coast of Wales. The cloud will increase over the Western Isles, and some patchy rain is possible here late in the day. The winds lighter than today, certainly across the south you'll notice that difference, and as a result feeling quite a bit warmer. Temperatures maybe a smidge above the average, high teens generally, maybe into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. 22 is possible. High pressure promises some fine weather for most of us on Saturday. Quite a warm day as well, but look at this, a deepening area of low pressure, the isobars squidging together, so quite a change for Sunday. It's going to be a weekend of two halves really. Dry for most with hazy sunshine on Saturday, but for Sunday, that weather system will turn things wet and windy, and the humidity will be picking up through the weekend as well. That's all from me for now. Goodbye.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Lanes are restricted on the southbound side of the M60 at junction 13. In Kent, the A282 anti-clockwise entry slip from the A206 faces congestion with a 10-minute delay. Normal traffic conditions are anticipated between 4 and 4:15 this afternoon. In Devon, the M5 northbound between junctions 29 and 28 has a lane closed due to a vehicle tyre change. Traffic should clear between 4 and 4:15 today. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway reports delays between Bedford and Luton Airport Parkway, while Great Western Railway services to and from Penzance face disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live across the UK and we're bringing you all of the very latest debate, news and analysis coming up on the show today.
Involved is probably not really fit to be trusted with major affairs of state.
I think she's tried to game the system, as the phrase has it, and she's been found out.
Sympathy in short supply amongst Brits. Is Angela Rayner on political death row? Well, the under-fire Deputy PM could be dealt to a fate by the PM's ethics watchdog later today. Will Keir Starmer stand by his deputy or throw a sacrificial lamb to the pack? On today's show, I'll be joined by an unlikely defender of Miss Rayner, former Tory MP and GB News presenter Miriam Cates. And also coming up on today's show...
At what point did we become North Korea?
Nigel Farage claims the UK is turning into North Korea, with mother Lucy Connolly jailed for a Facebook post, comedian Graham Linehan arrested for trans tweets, and a Tony Blair-backed digital ID incoming. Is he right? And shocking new Home Office data seen exclusively by GB News has shown an astonishing 40% of all asylum seekers claiming to be unaccompanied children are actually adults. It's the asylum scandal of the year. On today's show, I'll speak to experts who say it's time to biometrically age all asylum seekers and deport the fake children. And the legendary Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91, and we're paying him tribute throughout the rest of the show, and that's all coming up in your next hour. How many times have we said on this show the lunatics have taken over the asylum system? Astonishing data today, exclusively seen by GB News. 40% of all asylum seekers claiming to be children aren't children. They're faking it. They're gaming the system. Why would they do that? It's quite simple. There's an 84% likelihood of being accepted for asylum if you claim you're a child, and then you get the gold standard, preferential treatment, access to the best social housing. The entire thing is a racket. And I put it to you today, we need to start ageing everybody who comes into the country biometrically. They do that in many European Union nations. It's non-invasive, there's no problemo, and the lawyers keep stopping us from doing it. Later on the show, I'll be having a ding-dong with a human rights lawyer, and I'll put it to him. This is a scandal. It's the asylum scandal of the century. It needs to stop right now. Let me know your thoughts on that. gbnews.com/you'll say is the way to do so. But now's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. The top story from the newsroom this hour. Sir Keir Starmer has condemned today appalling graffiti sprayed near Angela Rayner's home near Hove, saying that MPs' private properties should never be targeted. It comes as the Deputy Prime Minister faces mounting pressure after admitting she underpaid stamp duty on an £800,000 flat. Rayner insists it was a mistake linked to complex legal advice involving a trust for her son with special educational needs. She's referred herself to the Prime Minister's Standards Advisor, who is expected to report back within days. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, though, demanding Sir Keir Starmer sack her. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves, however, says she has full confidence in Angela Rayner. Take a listen.
I have full confidence in Angela Rayner. She's a good friend and a colleague. She has accepted the right stamp duty wasn't paid. That was an error. That was a mistake. She is working hard now to rectify that.
Rachel Reeves there speaking earlier. Well, the co-creator of Father Ted, Graham Linehan, is on trial in London today, accused of harassing a transgender activist online and damaging her phone. Westminster Magistrates Court heard the comedy writer, aged 57, posted a series of offensive and vindictive tweets about 18-year-old Sophia Brooks last October, including calling her a domestic terrorist and a sociopath. He also allegedly knocked her phone from her hand at a conference after she confronted him about those posts. Ms Brooks told the court that she was left alarmed and distressed. Linehan has pleaded not guilty to harassment and criminal damage, and he insists his social media activity was in the public interest and claims he acted in self-defence when the phone incident happened. That trial is continuing. A judge has just returned to court, ready to give his verdict in the trial of asylum seeker Hadush Kabatu, accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in Essex. The 28-year-old Ethiopian national, who was staying at the Bell Hotel in Epping, faces 5 charges, including sexual assault, attempted assault, harassment and inciting a child into sexual activity. The court heard allegations that Kabatu tried to kiss 2 teenage girls, telling them he, quote, wanted to have a baby, and also made advances towards an adult woman. Kabatu denies all charges, calling the claims a fabrication. And he also told the court that he is not an animal. In London, 17 people have been injured after a double-decker bus crashed near Victoria Station. The Route 24 service veered onto the pavement at around 8:20 this morning, just yards from one of Britain's busiest rail hubs. 15 people, including the driver, were taken to hospital. Police say none of the injuries are life-threatening. Eyewitnesses described a massive bang and people screaming as the bus came off the road at speed. Police are now appealing for dashcam footage and mobile phone footage as their investigation continues. A former Royal Marine has denied deliberately driving into crowds of Liverpool fans celebrating the club's Premier League victory parade. 53-year-old Paul Doyle faces 31 charges, including grievous bodily harm with intent. It's after more than 130 people were injured in May. The victims ranged from babies to a 77-year-old. While appearing by video link in prison, Doyle wiped away tears as his defence accused Belmarsh of blocking access to evidence. His trial is now set for November, and prosecutors allege he used his car as a weapon. Meanwhile, in Lisbon, the mayor there has called Wednesday's funicular disaster one of the biggest tragedies in the city's recent history. 16 people were killed and more than 20 left injured, including tourists from Germany and Spain. When the packed carriage came off the tracks, a 3-year-old child was among those wounded. One local guide described rushing to the scene, saying, quote, "When I got to the crushed car, all I could hear was silence." Portugal's Transport Office says initial findings into the cause will be released tomorrow. And legendary fashion designer Giorgio Armani has sadly died at the age of 91. The Italian style icon built a global empire that redefined modern elegance, blending sharp tailoring with business acumen to grow a company worth billions. Armani's name became synonymous with understated luxury, dressing Hollywood stars and power players alike. His death was confirmed by the Armani Group, which said the industry has lost one of its most visionary figures. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you in around half an hour's time. Now, though, I do believe we can take a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club.
proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here are those markets for you just after 4 o'clock. The pound will buy you $1.3450 and €1.1543. The price of gold is £2,639.97. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,198 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, tick-tock. Angela Rayner is battling for her political future as pressure continues to grow over the stamp duty scandal. Overnight, her £800,000 seaside flat in Hove was vandalised with graffiti branding her a tax evader. Now, other offensive messages were daubed across walls and hoardings near the Deputy PM's new apartment, though it is understood that she was not there at the time. Well, we've been out and about asking the great British public whether it's time for the Deputy PM to get to marching orders.
I think if she can't manage her own affairs or delegate somebody that she makes sure is capable of managing her own affairs, then that raises doubts about her general competence. And I think that applies in a lot of cases like this. It signals that the person involved is probably not really fit to be trusted with.
So I think we should wait and let the process follow through. I think it's more complicated than the quick clickbait headline.
Absolutely. I mean, she's the Deputy Prime Minister and surely the standard expected of her is much higher.
Unfortunately, I think she should. Her position is now untenable. The people in authority should be white and white, and I think the laws are fairly clear.
Well, we're going to now speak with the chief political commentator at The Independent, John Rentoul. John, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. The clock seems to be ticking. The British public, they're having very, very little sympathy for under fire Angela Rayner, and a fresh poll we've just seen from Electoral Calculus saying only 15% of the British electorate believe that Angela Rayner should remain in her position. What say you?
Well, that's probably what the British public would say about almost any leading politician. Unfortunately, there is a sort of anti-politics mood in the country, as you know, Martin. I'm 50-50. I defended Angela Rayner for some time. I'm disappointed with her. Because I defended her on the basis of the information that we had at the time, which was that she had bought a flat, she didn't have another property, and so she'd paid the stamp duty that was due. That has turned out not to be the case, and I think the thing that really disappoints me most is that she allowed people to go out and defend her. I mean, not me, but she allowed ministerial colleagues and the Prime Minister to defend her while she knew that there was a question mark over her dealings.
That's right, because she knew on Monday what came out on Wednesday, right? So in those 2 days, she could.
Well, she knew that there was yes. it wasn't clear, and so I think she should have at that point said something rather than allowed people to go on defending her.
Now, John, one of your sparring partners, Dan Hodges, in the Mail, he said that you'd have to be completely deluded to believe that Angela Rayner has any political future in the UK. It's over for her whether she stays in her position or not. And isn't that the bigger point? Even if she scrapes through this, even if she dodges the bullet, so to speak, the British public will simply believe here is yet another parliamentarian who tells us to live our lives one way and they live their own lives in quite another way.
I think you're right that there is a lot of damage to the government's reputation, whether she stays or whether she goes. But I think that Keir Starmer would still, just on balance, I think probably 52% to 48%. I think he would prefer to keep her because she is good at politics. She can communicate well with the public, and she is popular with the Labour Party. He needs somebody like that around him. So he must be hoping, I think, that his independent advisor will find that she hasn't. She made an honest mistake rather than a careless or reckless mistake, in which case she could probably survive.
And John Rentoul, maybe if that vote came back as 52-48% in favour, Keir Starmer would campaign to overturn it for 3 years, like he did with Brexit. I digress. Can I make a serious point, though, John Rentoul, and irrespective of where you stand on Angela Rayner. I think it's grotesque and reprehensible that people are vandalising her house. I don't think we should be doing that anywhere with any politician. When Jacob Rees-Mogg's house was vandalised by anarchists, by leftists, that was grotesque. I think there's something chilling, do you not agree, of people going to a property where a parliamentarian lives? We can't have that kind of behaviour going on, irrespective of politics.
Absolutely not. That's 100% a line has been crossed. I didn't agree with it when people climbed on Rishi Sunak's house. You know, he wasn't there at the time, but those Greenpeace protesters, they climbed on his house and draped it with black cloth. That was totally unacceptable. You leave politicians' private homes alone, and that's the same thing happened with Keir Starmer's house in Kentish Town. I mean, obviously he wasn't there at the time, but you know, a relation was, and it's totally unacceptable.
It just makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. You know, we can disagree with people, we can expect standards to be met, and they can leave their post. But I just don't like it when people's houses are targeted like this. It makes me feel deeply chilled. We don't want anything bad to happen to anybody in politics. I think putting your beliefs to one side, I think we can all agree on that. Can I ask you, though, about an interesting thing that Jacob Rees-Mogg mentioned to me last night, and that is, if Angela Rayner were to be booted out or step aside from her role as deputy leader, this then would go to the membership of the party, right, to decide the next deputy leader. And at the moment, John Rentoul, there's a runaway favourite in terms of popularity, Ed Miliband. Could Ed Miliband be back from the dead as the deputy leader?
No, there isn't. I really don't think so. I think if the independent advisor finds against Angela Rayner, then she will resign as Deputy Prime Minister and as Housing Secretary. But I don't think she would necessarily resign as Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, which is, as you say, elected by party members. She would carry on. I think it would be inconvenient for the Labour Party to have a deputy leadership election at the moment. But if there was one, I don't think Ed Miliband would be a candidate.
Well, John Rentoul, they're calling her three pads Rayner. She's got 3 jobs. That's the thing. Will she only go from the housing minister and save herself losing the bigger role? Who knows? We have to wait and see. John Rentoul, always a pleasure to have your company on the show. Thank you very, very much. And let's bring in my next guest now. I'm joined by political commentator Andy Williams. Andy, a pleasure to have your company. I'd repeat that point. Dan Hodges said you'd have to be deluded to believe that Angela Rayner has a political future in the Labour Party. What say you?
Well, firstly, I mean, I agree with every word John Rentoul said, which is that, you know, it's really disappointing. I also defended her. If this was an honest mistake, that's fine, but it does nothing at all for trust in our politics. By the way, I don't think this is a party political issue, but I think the problem for Angela Rayner is the charge of hypocrisy, which is that she has consistently taken a very hard line on whether it's Jeremy Hunt or Nadeem Zahawi or other people who are accused of maybe not being completely straight down the line on tax. So, of course, there's that charge of hypocrisy. But yeah, in terms of her political future, whether she stays or goes, I'm afraid, I think the damage to her reputation is done. We know that people in the country will draw their own conclusions, and most of them, rightly or wrongly, will think that she's not behaved properly. And I think mud sticks, unfortunately.
And Sir Laurie Magnus, who's he's in chief of the Ethics Committee. We're hearing that he's expected to send a verdict either today or tomorrow, but before the weekend. Ms Rayner herself, we hear, is hobnobbing with mayors today. And by the way, I've heard that she wants to try and close down the right for mayors to be standing MPs as well, because one of those mayors, Andy Burnham, might want her job in the future. I think you're right, though. Now, whether she stays or whether she goes, she now looks very, very much like damaged goods.
Yeah, and it does nothing for the wider reputation of government. I think John Rentoul made a really good point there, that the Prime Minister went out to bat for her, went out to defend her. He's actually been incredibly loyal to Angela Rayner, and that does nothing for his reputation either. So I think it's a huge problem. I mean, as for Andy Burnham, by the way, he is not one of my favourite people in the Labour Party. I think the idea that he's going to sort of swoop in, take a seat, you know, go into Parliament and eventually become leader of the Labour Party and maybe Prime Minister, I think it's fanciful, and I don't think it would be a very good thing. But anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, in terms of Angela Rayner's reputation, I'm afraid... Sorry, Martin?
I said it could be worse. It could be Sadiq Khan who's trying to become...
I don't think that's very likely. But I have to say, I'm afraid that, there are certain moments in a political career that are the things we ultimately associate individuals with. And whatever happens, I'm afraid, for Angela Rayner, this is something that people will not forget. And, I would strongly make the case that Angela Rayner is not a bad person. She's a good person. She is actually much more capable and thoughtful and impactful than people give her credit for. And I do think there is a lot of snobbery around Angela Rayner. I think there are elements of the press who don't like the fact that a working class woman who had a child when she was 16 years old has become Deputy Prime Minister.
I think that's all excuses. Look, Andy, I think that's all excuses. I'm a working class bloke at heart, and I don't think you should be able to go, well, I come from a humble background, therefore I'm allowed to dodge a £40,000 stamp duty bill. Now, that's cobblers.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I think if you look at the coverage of Angela Rayner throughout her political career, there has been an underlying element of snobbery throughout. But I'm not suggesting whatsoever that is a factor in this case. In this case, clearly, whether she made an honest mistake or whether she lied deliberately or by omission, clearly she has made a big mistake here. So those are two different things. I'm just making the point that she has, against the odds, risen to a really significant position, and actually I think it is much more capable than people give her credit for. But if we're talking about her reputation, which is what this conversation is about, there is no doubt that even if she survives, her reputation is irrevocably damaged.
Andy Williams isn't a huge problem now being handed to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, not without her own popularity problems. That budget on November the 26th, the latest possible date, they're putting off the bad news for as long as possible. It will expect people to cough up more money to support the country. Those with the broadest shoulders must pay the most, apart from, it would seem, the Deputy PM.
Well, look, in terms of the fiscal position, the government's in a huge bind. It's tied its hands by saying that the government saying it wasn't going to raise the three major taxes: income tax, VAT and national insurance. We can't tax business anymore because we've seen with the employer national insurance rise, for example, that has damaged business confidence and it has added cost to business. So we can't do that. And yet there is money to find. That is the absolute reality. We've tried spending cuts. The government couldn't get that through Parliament because the left of the Labour Party kicked up a fuss, which I think is a huge problem. So this is the no good options budget. It's going to be brutal, and I think it's going to require the government, frankly, to do one of two things: either break its promises, and actually, if I was Rachel Reeves, I would be standing up and saying, we made a promise at the time, the context has changed and we're going to have to do something different, or you're going to have to tax the wealthy and businesses. And personally, I just don't think that's a smart move. I think it's going to dampen even further very weak economic growth, and we need to be prioritising and incentivising businesses, not punishing them with more tax.
Andy Williams, we depart agreeing. I absolutely agree it's going to be a long autumn until November 26th. Andy Williams, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Now, coming next, we're debating whether Britain could be heading for an IMF bailout, or is this simply hysteria? And also next, Nigel Farage claims the UK is turning into North Korea. Well, with mother Lucy Connolly jailed for a Facebook post, comedian Graham Linehan arrested for trans tweets, and a Tony Blair-backed digital ID incoming. Does the leader of Reform UK have a point? That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:25 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, compared Britain to North Korea when facing questions about the UK's approach to free speech in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Now, he was discussing the Metropolitan Police's arrest of Father Ted co-creator and the Irish national Graham Linehan when he made the rather bold claim. Well, let's now speak with the Legislative Affairs Director of the Free Speech Union, Sam Armstrong. Sam, an absolute pleasure to have your company. Mothers thrown in jail for Facebook posts. 5 coppers intercepting a comedian at Heathrow. Tony Blair trying to barrage us towards compulsory digital ID. We don't quite have a dictatorship in Britain yet, but does Nigel Farage have a point? Are we nudging towards North Korea?
The stats are striking. There are 30 arrests every single day in this country for speech crimes. Graham Linehan is in many ways just the tip of the iceberg. The British police have become addicted, absolutely addicted, to getting into policing the confines of debate on the internet. They seem to see a sort of breach of the peace online as their primary job to police. And it's inevitable that I think Mark Rowley, actually the Commissioner of the Met, he's wrong on a lot, but he was slightly right this week when he said it's an impossible job for them to be placed where they're put in charge of confining the limits of the culture war, because they're not equipped to deal with it. They're not getting it right, and they're being placed in a position in which they are going to get it wrong again and again and again.
Sam Armstrong, we hear all the time about who makes these terrible decisions and why is it happening? Mark Rowley is blaming, lawmakers, but those officers didn't have to arrest Graham Linehan. They made a decision to do that. And Nigel Farage made a fascinating point yesterday, I felt, in DC, when he said this authoritarianism, he said to the American audience, began during COVID lockdowns, when the police and the lawmakers, they got a taste for this jackbootery, and that still lingers on to this day.
Yeah, let's just get a couple of things clear from the outset. Mark Rowley is wrong, plain wrong, when he says the police had no choice but to arrest Graham Linehan. The offence that he was arrested for didn't even apply to trans identity. They just got the offence wrong. And okay, maybe even if I was wrong on that, maybe they did have to arrest him. But did they need to send 5 armed police officers to go and haul him off? Wasn't one submachine gun enough? When they got to the second, the third, the fourth, the 5th submachine gun, plus a sidearm, plus a taser on every single officer to haul off a plane, a 50-something-year-old comedy writer who was flying into the country in order to attend a court hearing. Does nobody in the police force just stop and think for a minute and consider whether that was proportionate? Look, Martin, they like doing this stuff because they like being in the newspapers. The coppers like turning around and saying to everyone back in the mess room at the end of the day, oh, I went and nicked the bloke who wrote Father Ted today. We all know what's happened. Mark Rowley can pretend as much as he like. He can carp on as much as he like about it's Parliament's fault, just as he did, of course, when he was unable to stop the hate marches going on through Jewish areas in London's streets for so long. But at the end of the day, the police make decisions. Mark Rowley's in charge of the tactical decisions that the police made, and they blew it. They absolutely categorically blew it this week, and they consistently blow it. And every time they blow it, they do it in one direction, which is to impose a kind of 2-tier standard in which they don't want to know if it's eco-loons or all the rest of it. But the moment someone says a view online that The Guardian doesn't like, they're marching in with as many blokes as they can muster.
All right, Sam. I want to mention another point. Yes, you talk about 2-tier policing. Nigel Farage said yesterday he brought to the attention of the American audience and no doubt the world Britain's incoming redefinition of Islamophobia. And when he said this will give a 2-tiered legal system towards Islam, you could hear the oxygen sucking out of the room. The American audience was mortified that any faith would get special protection. And are you especially concerned that what we see the way the police are now, how on earth might they interpret this new definition of Islamophobia?
Well, look, let's be clear, right? The reason that this government is introducing this definition to give Muslims special status in this country is because they have got a problem winning over the Muslim vote in a number of major cities. That is a fact. You cannot get away from that. Keir Starmer is terrified of Jeremy Corbyn's latest political project. That's why they're doing it. And what is it going to do? It is basically going to outlaw anybody in this country from expressing reasonable criticisms of a religious idea. I'll be frank, I think Islam is wrong. I think they've got the wrong idea. I don't believe that Muhammad was a prophet of God. I don't believe that the teachings of the Quran are God's teachings. But I won't be able to say that out loud in public without being hauled before the courts, and nor will any of the viewers of GB News. That is wrong, and it sends a really, really worrying sense to people that their views, their ideas are being clamped down on a government that seems to be prepared to trample all over free speech whenever it suits its political agenda.
OK, Sam Armstrong, very, very strong words, very forthrightly put to us. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. That's the Legislative Affairs Director of the Free Speech Union, Sam Armstrong. Top man, thank you very, very much indeed. Forthright opinions there. Let us know what you think on that. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including we'll be debating whether Britain could be heading for an IMF bailout. Could there be financial meltdown, or is this simply hysteria? And also next, the legendary Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91. We'll be paying tribute to him. But first, here's your latest well-tailored man. It's your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 4:30. As we just heard there, fashion icon Giorgio Armani has sadly died at the age of 91. The man behind red carpet glamour and power dressing worked until his final days. His label called him today the tireless driving force of modern fashion. Sir Keir Starmer has condemned graffiti sprayed near Angela Rayner's home, calling it appalling. The Deputy Prime Minister is facing mounting pressure after admitting she underpaid stamp duty on her £800,000 flat, with the Prime Minister saying that he will pass it to his standards advisor, with a ruling expected in days. Father Ted creator Graham Linehan is on trial in London, accused of harassing an 18-year-old transgender activist. Prosecutors say his social media posts were oppressive and vindictive. He denies the charges. 17 people have been injured in London, with most people taken to hospital after a bus struck pedestrians on a busy street near Victoria Station. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 5.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some very heavy rain in places today. Tomorrow, a lot calmer. The winds will be lighter, particularly in the south, and most of us will have a dry day. It's been far from that today over parts of the Midlands, northern England, but and a very heavy rain, some thunderstorms around too. It is now pulling out into the North Sea. We'll keep a few showers going through the nights, parts of Wales, western Scotland, the odd one for northwest England and Northern Ireland, but most places will become dry, long clear spells. A bit cooler than last night as well. Temperatures, certainly rural spots, well down into single figures. So a fresh but fine start to Friday. For most of us, there'll be some sunshine around tomorrow. Still enough of a breeze to bring in a few showers coming into the Highlands and the Western Isles, maybe the Northern Isles of Scotland, but most places will have a dry and fine start. Again, the odd shower coming into the north and the west of Northern Ireland, perhaps northwest England too, but the majority for England and Wales, fine, bright start with some decent spells of sunshine, but it will be just a little bit cooler than it has been. Now, as you go through the day, some cloud will bubble up a little bit, and we'll see maybe the odd shower again developing northwest England, west coast of Wales. The cloud will increase over the Western Isles and some patchy rain is possible here late in the day. The winds lighter than today, certainly across the south you'll notice that difference, and as a result feeling quite a bit warmer. Temperatures maybe a smidge above the average, high teens generally, maybe into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. 22 is possible. High pressure promises some fine weather for most of us on Saturday. Quite a warm day as well, but look at this, a deepening area of low pressure, the isobars squidging together, so quite a change for Sunday. It's going to be a weekend of two halves really. Dry for most with hazy sunshine on Saturday, but for Sunday that weather system will turn things wet and windy. The humidity will be picking up through the weekend as well. That's all from me for now. Goodbye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. In West Sussex, a broken down vehicle is blocking the A23 northbound between the junctions with the A272 and the M23. One lane is closed, causing delays. The M60 anti-clockwise at junction 13 in Salford also faces disruption, with the exit slip road entirely closed. Normal conditions should return soon, but drivers should remain cautious and allow extra travel time. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway faces delays between Bedford and Luton Airport Parkway. Meanwhile, London Overground has disruptions on several routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. GB News got some breaking news for you now, and it's a major story. The asylum seeker Hadush Gerbeslassie Kabatu, 38, has been found guilty at Chelmsford Magistrates Court of sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old girl in Epping, Essex, days after arriving in the UK on a small boat. Now, this incident was the one, of course, that sparked all of the protests in Epping. This was the incident that caused people to take to the streets. Just to repeat that breaking news, a major piece of breaking news today. The asylum seeker Hadush Gerbeslassie Kabatu, aged 38. He's been found guilty at Chelmsford Magistrates Court of sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old girl, a child, in Epping, Essex, just days after arriving in the UK on a small boat. You can see CCTV footage there of him being apprehended by Essex police and of him being arrested, found guilty there on 2 counts. And this of course, precipitated those protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping, where this individual was a resident. Kickstarted a huge conversation nationwide about who are these people who walk among us, what are their backgrounds, their propensity to sexually offend, and here we have it, guilty on 2 counts. Asylum seeker Hadush Gerbeslassie Kabatu, 38, found guilty at Chelmsford Magistrates Court of sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old girl, a child, in Epping, Essex, just days after arriving in the UK on a small boat. He was an Ethiopian national. He was alleged to have attempted to kiss the teenager and put his hand on her thigh, and he brushed her hair in July as she offered him a pizza on a park bench. Now, an adult member of the public also accused Kabatu of trying to kiss her, put his hand on her leg and telling her she was pretty. This was just days after he arrived on a small boat, an illegal immigrant from Ethiopia. He claimed to be a teacher of sports in his home country. He initially had denied those 2 counts of sexual assault, 1 count of attempted sexual assault and 1 count of inciting a girl to engage in sexual activity, and also 1 count of harassment without finding. But today, magistrates have found this creature guilty. Hadush Gerbeslassie Kabatu, 38, found guilty at Chelmsford Magistrates Court of sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old girl, a schoolgirl in Epping. Sorry, I get very emotional about things like this. It's just 14-year-old girl on a bench who was having pizza. Let's get now to our man, our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who joins us from outside the court. Charlie, over to you.
Well, Martin, we've just been told that Hadush Kabatu, the Ethiopian small boat migrant found guilty of sexually assaulting a teenage girl, will be sentenced on the 23rd of September at this court, Chelmsford Magistrates Court. And as I was leaving court just now, the district judge, Christopher Williams, warned him to expect an immediate custodial sentence, adding, "It is just a question now of how long." There was no reaction from Kabatu in the dock as the judgment was handing down. That verdict lasting nearly an hour for the district judge to come to his conclusions, summing up the 2-day trial from last week and the prosecution and defence cases that he reheard earlier this afternoon. Now, Kabatu sat in the dock with one hand on his face, wearing a prison-issued grey tracksuit, and remained motionless as he heard the deliberations from the prosecution and the defence counsel through an interpreter, a Tigrinya interpreter, which is a language which is commonly found in Ethiopia and parts of Eritrea. But he's been found guilty of all charges against him. That is the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl, the sexual assault of a woman, and attempting a sexual assault of a girl, inciting that girl to engage in sexual activity, and harassment of the girl without violence. It was a nervous courtroom towards the conclusion. Suddenly the room fell silent as Christopher Williams gave his conclusions. As I say, after nearly an hour of summarising the verdicts, you could feel that tension. One member of the gallery sitting near me said that he was a friend of one of those children's fathers. He was reacting very nervously as that judgment was about to come through. A gallery packed with journalists, and the judge saying that he was aware of the significant press and public interest attention in this case. Now, as he summarised his verdict, the judge, Christopher Williams, says that he was not persuaded of the conspiracy that was claimed by the defendant against him. Mr. Kabatu said that the woman who had accused him of sexual assault, had engaged with the 14-year-old girl and her friends to conspire against him, saying they made up the allegations after encountering him. The judge said, though, that he wasn't persuaded by any evidence to support that, and that there was no basis in claims that the children fabricated the accounts they gave. There were 3 different children giving evidence as witnesses in this case. He said that some of the inconsistencies between their accounts make it even less likely that they concocted their evidence together to generate a conspiracy. When he also came towards that conclusion, the judge said that it was clear and consistent that Mr. Kibatu had spoken to the children. But as he went through the reason for finding those guilty verdicts on all 5 of those counts, he pointed to the fact that Mr. Kibatu had not given any comments during his police interview before later relying on a different account of what had happened in the court. He said that this had gone against him. Now, the District Judge Christopher Williams also said that because there were no previous convictions against Kibatu, Hadush Kibatu, the Ethiopian small boat migrant asylum seeker being held in the Epping hotel, the Bell Hotel, he said that he was technically of good character. He said this because the prosecution, the Crown, had gone to great lengths to check with the countries that he had passed through on the way to Britain to see if he had any outstanding or any claims against him through the court systems in any of those countries. And he said that despite those great efforts, they had not been able to find any evidence of previous criminal history. Now, we didn't learn which countries he had gone through or how long his journey had taken, although we did learn today that he had been a teacher in Ethiopia. So both the prosecution and defence asserting that he was of good character, which the judge said he considered during his judgment. We also went back during that almost hour of summarising the evidence of what happened in Chelmsford Magistrates Court to the moment of Kibatu's arrest on the 8th of July. Now, the judge said that there was no DNA belonging to the 14-year-old girl found on his hands after they were swabbed by Essex police. Now, a prepared statement was read on behalf of Kibatu during ahead of a police interview where he eventually gave no comment, and the prepared statement said that Kibatu was at the locations that each of the alleged offences took place, but that he didn't commit them. And again, they asserted that he was of good character. But the judge here today finding that the evidence against him was overwhelming, with these individual witness accounts by the children and also the woman that he was found guilty of sexually assaulting. Now, Christopher Williams, as he gave his remarks, as he concluded his remarks, he saw Mr. Kibatu being taken away, led down to the cells by 2 security guards. He'll be held on remand in prison until his sentencing, which will take place on the 23rd of September in just a few weeks' time. There was quite a significant buzz of tension inside that room, Martin, not just because of the severity of what was taking place inside Chelmsford's Magistrates Court regarding those allegations, now guilty charges of sexually assaulting a teenage girl, but also because of the wider public interest in this case. Because, Martin, of course, so much anger and focus has been directed in Epping and around the country as a consequence of these offences, now confirmed by District Judge Christopher Williams. You could sense almost that the judge knew that there was possibly more interest in the judgment he was giving than had ever been given before and may ever be given, because of how vital this case has been to policing, law and order and the wider political debate in this country. But he's down in the cells now, and he'll be sentenced at this court again on the 23rd of September as Hadush Kibatu, an Ethiopian small boat migrant asylum seeker, has been found guilty of 5 charges, including the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl, the sexual assault of a woman, the attempted sexual assault of the same girl, inciting that girl to engage in sexual activity, harassment of the girl without violence. Guilty on all 5 counts and set for an immediate custodial sentence on the 23rd of September.
You know, Charlie Peters, it's comforting and sobering that justice has been served. I feel really upset about this case, you know, because this is the 14-year-old girl. I'm trying my best to keep it together here. And The Guardian are still reporting on this as precipitating far-right protests. You're not far-right if you object to a schoolgirl being sexually approached by an Ethiopian illegal immigrant. And Charlie Peters is coming out here in court. Molly Dias, defending Kobatu, asked the girl if she had made up allegations because she was angry that Kobatu was an asylum seeker. And the girl replied, "I didn't make up any allegation. I know exactly what I saw. I have no issue with asylum seekers. I was angry that he had touched a 14-year-old girl." What an incredibly grim ordeal, not only to have to go through in person, Charlie Peters, but to be put through in court like that. And I suspect, Charlie Peters, this will be the beginning of a huge national conversation, not only just about this case, but this was what precipitated those protests in Epping and indeed nationwide. And Charlie Peters, a lot of people will be asking big questions about who walks amongst us and how safe are all of our children.
Yes, Martin, and the court heard again today how Hadush Kobatu had arrived in Britain just days before these offences took place, from July the 7th to July the 9th. And one of the witnesses in this trial, a boy who observed many of the incidents taking place, said that he had been told by Kobatu that he had paid just over £2,000 to arrive in Britain on a dinghy. We heard how Kobatu had invited a girl back to the Bell Hotel, the site of so many protests led primarily by parents and mums in Epping, in Essex, had invited her back there, having made reference to making babies and making Jamaican babies, as was quoted during that 2-day trial last week. There were attempts, as you've just described, Martin, to obviously put forward Kobatu's defence, but ultimately during Christopher Williams' final judgment here at Chelmsford Magistrates Court, he pointed to the inconsistencies in Kobatu's defence, how he had not given information to the police when arrested, how he had asserted that he had just said hi to the girls, that had not continued a conversation with those children, but then in a police interview gave no comment, and even the finding of good character, because there were no previous convictions against him during his movement from Ethiopia to Britain, could not defend him against that. There was also clearly, I think, more than just a display to show how considered the District Judge Christopher Williams was in assessing all of the evidence in this case. There was clearly on his part a demonstration and a need to accurately and clearly review all of the evidence being heard before him, which was demonstrated by maybe an hour into today's proceedings. Him asking to look at footage again of a moment when the children first reported the incident to the police. So the court fell silent, as it did numerous times during moments of greater tension inside Chelmsford Magistrates Courts today, as the District Judge Christopher Williams asked for that footage to be replayed. He wanted to do that after the prosecuting and defence barristers had summarised their claims and given their summarising speeches, but ultimately it was the prosecution's case that won out here, and Mr. Kobatu, guilty on all 5 counts, is set to be sentenced at the same place on the 23rd of September. He remains in custody.
Thank you, Charlie Peters. A harrowing case, and we'll come back to you throughout the show for more on this. Thank you very much, Charlie Peters. Now, the Chancellor has hit back as warnings that Britain could be heading for an IMF bailout, brushing off comparisons to the 1976 financial crisis. Rachel Reeves blasted economists for talking rubbish and insisted her budget plans alongside growth reforms would keep the country on solid economic ground. Well, joining me now is the economics editor at The Spectator, Michael Simmons. Michael, welcome to the show and thank you for being patient and waiting for us there. We had the big breaking news story. In a nutshell, are we heading for a 70s-style meltdown just yet?
We're not heading for an IMF bailout, but that's only because we're in such dire straits that the IMF simply couldn't afford to bail us out. We're spending a staggering amount of money, paying for our debt interest payments. We pay more in a single month just on debt interest than we do for border policing in an entire year. And basically, markets, have had enough. The cost of buying that debt, the gilt yields, they call them, has been going up and up and up all of this year, and increasingly that's a problem. It means that Rachel Reeves is really going to struggle to balance the books. So we're not heading for a 1970s bailout, but we're heading for a 1970s crisis.
So on a scale of Trussonomics, how bad is Reevenomics in comparison?
Well, if you look at where the yields have kind of spiked, where they spiked around that Truss mini budget, they're actually higher than at that point. Now, a lot of that is, the Chancellor would say a lot of this is happening in other countries too, and she's not wrong. But one, does it matter? What the cause is, it's still a problem that's got to be met. But also, if you compare the G7 countries, look at the range of them, we're well ahead above them, so we're absolutely the worst. So I think, anyone in Labour who spent any time criticising Liz Truss has got to be very quiet now, because, we're in a worse position than we were back then.
And things could only get worse, perhaps, on November the 26th?
Well, absolutely. I think she is going to scrape through this budget, because where she does have a point, that 50 billion black hole figure would be even worse than most people are predicting. But she's still going to face a black hole possibly of 20-30 billion. Now, she may be able to squeeze some tax rises, on housing, on what...
Michael Simmons, we have to leave it there. Simply run out of time because of that breaking news story. I do appreciate your comments. I sincerely do. Please stick with us on GB News. We'll have much more on that breaking news story. The Epping sex case has been found guilty. The Ethiopian. More on that next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some very heavy rain in places today. Tomorrow, a lot calmer. The winds will be lighter, particularly in the south, and most of us will have a dry day. It's been far from that today over parts of the Midlands, northern England, but out of very heavy rain, some thunderstorms around too. It is now pulling out into the North Sea. We'll keep a few showers going through the nights, parts of Wales, western Scotland, the odd one for northwest England and Northern Ireland, but most places will become dry, long clear spells. A bit cooler than last night as well. Temperatures, certainly rural spots, well down into single figures. So a fresh but fine start to Friday. For most of us, there'll be some sunshine around tomorrow. Still enough of a breeze to bring in a few showers coming into the Highlands and the Western Isles, maybe the Northern Isles of Scotland. But most places will have a dry and fine start. Again, the odd shower coming into the north and the west of Northern Ireland, perhaps northwest England too. But the majority for England and Wales, fine, bright start with some decent spells of sunshine. But it will be just a little bit cooler than it has been. Now, as you go through the day, some cloud will bubble up a little bit, and we'll see maybe the odd shower again developing northwest England, west coast of Wales. The cloud will increase over the Western Isles, and some patchy rain is possible here late in the day. The winds lighter than today, certainly across the south. You'll notice that difference, and as a result, feeling quite a bit warmer. Temperatures maybe a smidge above the average. High teens generally, maybe into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. 22 is possible. High pressure promises some fine weather for most of us on Saturday. Quite a warm day as well, but look at this, a deepening area of low pressure, the isobars squidging together, so quite a change for Sunday. It's going to be a weekend of two halves, really. Dry for most with hazy sunshine on Saturday, but for Sunday, that weather system will turn things wet and windy. The humidity will be picking up through the weekend as well. That's all from me for now. Goodbye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Drivers on the M74 southbound at junction 14 are advised to exercise caution due to a vehicle fire, and it is highly recommended to allow extra time for your journey due to potential delays. On the trains, East Midlands Railway is currently experiencing significant delays between Bedford and Luton Airport Parkway, which may cause inconvenience for passengers. Additionally, London Overground is reporting major disruption on various routes, with no service operating between Kilburn High Road and London Euston. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel. Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live across the UK. We're bringing you all of the very latest news, debate and analysis coming up on the show today. An asylum seeker has been found guilty at Chelmsford Magistrates Court of sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old schoolgirl in Epping, Essex, just days after arriving into the UK on a small boat. We'll be getting reaction to this shocking story that sparked the hotel protest there in Epping throughout the rest of the show. And also coming up on the show today.
Involved is probably not really fit to be trusted with major affairs of state.
I think she's tried to game the system, as the phrase has it, and she's been found out.
Is Angela Rayner on political death row? The under-fire Deputy PM could be dealt a fate by the PM's ethics watchdog later on today. Will Keir Starmer stand by his deputy or throw a sacrificial lamb to the pack? On today's show, I'll be joined by an unlikely defender of Miss Rayner, former Tory MP Miriam Cates. And we'll also have reaction to this.
At what point did we become North Korea?
Yes, Nigel Farage claims the UK is turning into North Korea, with mother Lucy Connolly jailed for a Facebook post, comedian Graham Linehan arrested for a trans tweet, and a Tony Blair backs digital ID incoming. Does he have a point? And the legendary Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91, and we're paying tribute to him throughout the show. And that's all coming in your next hour. Welcome to the show, and today's big breaking news. The illegal immigrant, the Ethiopian in Epping, found guilty on all charges, including sexually assaulting a 14-year-old schoolgirl and in trying to invite children back to the Bell Hotel in Epping, which of course became the scene of those protests, those pink protests, protests led by locals, protests that The Guardian, even now, this individual has been sent down as guilty, are calling far right. It's a case that's the barometer of the nation. Our man Charlie Peters will join us shortly from outside the magistrate's court there to talk about the case that has gripped a nation. Stick with us here on GB News. Get in touch. gbnews.com/you'll say is the way to do so. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock. Well, let's bring you the very latest then on that verdict at Chelmsford Crown Court, where an asylum seeker housed at the Bell Hotel in Epping has tonight been found guilty on all 5 charges against him, including the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. The court heard Hadush Kabatu also harassed 2 other teenagers and an adult woman. The 38-year-old denied the allegations, calling them fabrications, but the judge said the evidence was clear and consistent. Kabatu will be sentenced on the 23rd of this month, with the court warning an immediate prison term is likely. His arrest earlier this summer triggered protests and counter-demonstrations outside the Bell Hotel. And plenty more on that story with Charlie Peters later this hour. In other news, Sir Keir Starmer is refusing to say whether he would sack his deputy Angela Rayner if she is found to have broken the ministerial code over tax on her new Hove flat. The Prime Minister says he will, of course, act on the findings of his independent standards advisor after Ms Rayner admitted she underpaid stamp duty. She insists, though, it was a mistake linked to what she described as complex legal advice involving a trust for her son's special educational needs.
I have full confidence in Angela Rayner. She's a good friend and a colleague. She has accepted the right stamp duty wasn't paid. That was an error. That was a mistake. She is working hard now to rectify that.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves there, of course, giving her backing and, as she said, full confidence to Angela Rayner. In other news, the co-creator of Father Ted, Graham Linehan, is on trial in London, accused of harassing a transgender activist online and then damaging her phone. Westminster Magistrates Court heard the comedy writer, aged just 57, posted a series of offensive and vindictive tweets about 18-year-old Sophia Brooks, calling her a domestic terrorist and a sociopath. He also allegedly knocked her phone from her hand at a conference after she confronted him about those posts. Ms Brooks told the court she was left alarmed and distressed. Linehan has pleaded not guilty to harassment and criminal damage. He insists his social media activity was in the public interest and claims he acted in self-defence when the phone incident happened. That trial continues. In London, 17 people have been injured after a double-decker bus crashed near Victoria Station. The Route 24 service veered onto the pavement just before 8:30 this morning on Victoria Street, yards from one of Britain's busiest rail hubs. 15 people, including the driver, were taken to hospital. Police say none of the injuries are life-threatening. Eyewitnesses, though, describe a massive bang and people heard screaming as the bus came off the road at speed. Police are now appealing for dashcam and mobile phone footage as their investigation continues. A former Royal Marine has denied deliberately driving into crowds of Liverpool fans celebrating the club's Premier League victory parade. 53-year-old Paul Doyle faces 31 charges, including grievous bodily harm with intent, after more than 130 people were injured in May. The victims ranged from just babies to a 77-year-old. Appearing via video link from prison, Doyle wiped away tears as his defence accused Belmarsh of blocking access to evidence. His trial is set for November, prosecutors alleging he used his car as a weapon. In Portugal, Lisbon's mayor has called Wednesday's funicular disaster one of the biggest tragedies in the city's recent history. 16 people were killed and more than 20 injured, including tourists from Germany and Spain, when the packed carriage came off the tracks. A 3-year-old child was among the wounded, and one local described rushing to the scene, saying that all they could hear was silence. Portugal's Transport Office says initial findings into the cause will be released tomorrow. And legendary fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91. The Italian style icon built a global empire that redefined modern elegance, blending sharp tailoring with business acumen to grow a company worth billions. Armani's name became synonymous with understated luxury, dressing Hollywood stars and power players alike. His death was confirmed today by the Armani Group, which said the industry has lost one of its most visionary figures. Those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour. Next, though, let's take one final look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here are those markets for you just after 5 o'clock. The pound will buy you $1.3450 and €1.1543. The price of gold, £2,639.97 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,198 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome back. Breaking news for you this hour, and it's this. The asylum seeker, the Ethiopian asylum seeker, Hadush Kabatu, 38, has been found guilty at Chelmsford Magistrates Court of sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old schoolgirl in Epping, Essex, just days after arriving in the UK on a small boat. The case, of course, that precipitated all of those protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping, where Kabatu was a resident. Kabatu tried to invite children back to that hotel. Well, joining us now is our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who joins us from outside the court. Charlie, a totemic case of huge national significance and, of course, one that precipitated all of those protests at the hotel where Kabatu was a resident. Brings up to speed of in what was a simply breathtaking series of evidence you were witness to earlier.
Well, Martin, reflecting that concern that you've raised and the protest sparked by this incident occurring just days after Hadush Kabatu arrived in Britain on a small boat in early July, we have had a statement from the Crown Prosecution Service who say that this incident became a cause of deep concern for the local community. The Deputy Chief Crown Prosecutor with the CPS East of England's division has said that the prosecutors worked carefully and impartially to bring this case to justice according to the law, and reflecting the wider public interest and concern in this case was consistent throughout proceedings today. Before the defendant Hadush Kabatu even came in the dock, Christopher Williams, the district judge, was talking extensively about the widespread press and public interest in this case, talking about how he wouldn't allow that to deflect from him assessing it coolly, which both the prosecution and defence refer to. But ultimately, it was the judgment of Christopher Williams who said that there was insufficient credibility to the defence of Hadush Kabatu when he was in the dock and when he was speaking to the police. He concluded that Kabatu had created a version of events that he'd only decided upon when he took the witness stand, because we learnt during this trial last week that he gave no comment interviews when arrested by Essex police in early July, and that he gave an account of what had occurred which was not consistent with what he delivered in the courtroom. Now, we've also had further reaction from the Shadow Policing Minister, Matt Vickers. He's just written guilty just days after arriving on a small boat. The Conservatives said that the people of Epping are right to be furious and deserve protection from this ever happening again. And during the proceedings today, all of the summaries of the evidence was given, both the prosecution and defence, the summing up and the verdict taking several hours, with Christopher Williams, the district judge, delivering his verdict in almost an hour. A very extensive verdict where he carefully went through every allegation and defence that was provided during that just 2-day trial last week at the Chelmsford Magistrates Court. And it was a moment really of high drama when Courtroom 1 fell silent as District Judge Williams gave his final verdict, saying there was no consistency in the defence and that there was overwhelming consistency in the prosecution's case, as he found him guilty on all 5 charges. Now, Kobatu remained as he had done in the dock throughout today's proceedings. There was no reaction, his hand holding his cheek as he stared towards the judge and heard what was being said by Christopher Williams, by an interpreter speaking Tringria, which is a dialect spoken in Ethiopia and parts of Eritrea. He remained just leaning onto that hand that was holding his left cheek. At the start, however, of proceedings at 2 o'clock, when District Judge Williams arrived and started to summarise the charges, we did see Kobatu shaking his head as they were described to him by that interpreter with him in the dock. But finally, all charges were found guilty. That's sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl, the sexual assault of a woman, the attempted sexual assault of that same girl, inciting that girl also to engage in sexual activity, and finally harassment of that girl without violence. Guilty on all counts. And the judge described the evidence given by the children and those witnesses, the group that he had first encountered on the 7th of July, as clear and consistent. And he said that Kobatu's accounts was that he said only hi to them. However, the prosecution's case, he said, was overwhelming. Now, Kobatu, guilty on all 5 counts, will be sentenced here on the 23rd of September, with the judge telling him to expect a custodial sentence immediately.
Joy Peters, thank you for that summary. And of course, the period of that custodial sentence will be key, because if it breaches the 12-month threshold, then he could be liable for deportation. We'll have to wait to see how justice is handed down. Thank you very much, Charlie Peters, for joining us there live outside the Magistrates Court now to reflect upon this totemic case of huge national significance. I'm joined in the studio by the journalist and the commentator Aaron Newbury. Aaron, welcome to the show. The detail is what really chokes me. I've found myself getting very upset, and I still am, because this is the 14-year-old girl who was sat on a bench, who was approached by this individual. I'm going to be careful. Her instinct was to offer him pizza and to be nice to him. In response, he tried to put his hand on her leg. He tried to kiss her. He invited her back to the Bell Hotel in Epping, where he was a resident and he'd arrived from Ethiopia on a rubber dinghy illegally days earlier. This precipitated all those protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping. And I just want to say this, shame on you at The Guardian, shame on you now, today, because you're still saying the protesters outside that hotel are far right. It's disgusting that you're calling people far right for objecting to a 14-year-old being sexually assaulted. Look yourself in the mirror when you write those words. I just think you really should take stock of what you're doing. It's not far right to be appalled by a child being molested by an illegal immigrant. Back to you, Aaron. I had to get that out of my system. This case has huge significance, not only in the Epping area, but also nationally, because these protests were about who's in the hotel. Now we know what happens next.
I think this is a moment of quite a significant challenge for the government. I think we've heard a lot of very strong words from the government around how they will tackle illegal migration, how they will deal with criminals who illegally migrate into this country when they commit crimes in this country. And perhaps this is the gauntlet almost being thrown. Will this man be deported? You've already heard the Conservatives. I imagine will probably come out with something similar, saying that he should be deported. We've heard Chris Philp in the last few days has said that criminals who come into this country must be deported. And this is now, I think it is a moment of enormous political challenge for Labour. Do they now say, this is almost the test case? Yes. Is he going to be deported or not? And we will now see if those words are backed up with actions.
And we've recently seen, of course, the Sentencing Council trying to downgrade such sentences. First offenders. Kobatu is a first offender, at least in this country. We don't know a great deal about his criminal past. How can we know? That's part of the problem. But if it does surpass that 12-month threshold, we'll find out later on in September, surely the government will have to be seen to hand down the most swiftest and severe possible sentence, which means deportation. Otherwise, this problem, it will simply increase.
It's not going to make the process go away if they don't take firm action. And I think we're seeing protests. There's at the Britannia Hotel in London, there's the Bell Hotel in Epping. There are hotels across the country. We saw issues in Uxbridge in northwest London, I think it was last week, on protests there. If in areas where you have enormous anger in the public, the government needs to be seen to be taking action. And this is a chance for them to show that action and to take it, and we will have to see if they do that.
On the broader point, Aaron, of the government insisting it will close down asylum hotels, many people watching this channel, many people across the entire nation are saying, well, that really solved the problem. Because we found out yesterday, did we not, there are twice as many asylum seekers living in houses of multiple occupancy in streets across working class Britain, not on the same streets as politicians, not on the same streets as establishment journalists or perhaps those who say refugees welcome, the Stand Up for Racism Brigade, but in working class towns where nobody ever had a say. Do you think shifting this problem around the country is going to solve it?
Again, it's an enormous challenge when you have people coming into the country in small boats. Obviously, it is worth pointing out that there was a deterrent that was about to be launched, the Rwanda plan. The Conservatives very nearly launched that at the end of the last government and were stopped from doing so, or didn't manage to get it across the line. If you don't have an active deterrent, you're not going to stop people coming into the country. And of course, when they are here, they need to be housed until they are deported. You can't leave them there. They have to be put somewhere. The question is, you close the hotels, where do these people go?
Exactly, and it won't be on the same street, no doubt, as the lawmakers. Aaron Newbury, thank you very much for joining us in the studio today. A pleasure to have your company. Now moving on. Angela Rayner is battling for her political future as pressure continues to grow over the stamp duty scandal. Overnight, her £800,000 seaside flat in Hove was vandalised with graffiti branding her a tax evader. Now, offensive messages were also daubed across walls and hoardings near the Deputy PM's new apartment, though it is understood that she was not there at the time. Well, let's now speak with GBNews presenter and the former Conservative MP, Miriam Cates. Miriam, a pleasure to have your company. Miriam, thank you for coming on. And yesterday, you tweeted something, it went viral. Millions of people had a look at it because you stepped in as perhaps an unlikely ally, a defender of Angela Rayner. What made you take that position?
Well, I didn't expect it to get that much traction. If only my other tweets had that many views, Martin. I need to learn some lessons from this. But call me old-fashioned, but I think fairness is really, really important. I think it's a very important British value, and I think it underpins our democracy. This idea that we should treat our friends and our opponents equally under the law, that we should be reasonable in our judgments of them, and not gratuitously enjoy their downfall just because we don't like them. I think they're really important values. And I think it's not just Angela Rayner that will be damaged by this, let's face it, gleeful pile-on, but all of our politics. And I do agree that she has had some responsibility for creating the culture that we now live in. The previous Labour opposition, her and Starmer, did an awful lot to bring down politicians that they thought had a sniff of wrongdoing. But nevertheless, I think the important thing here is to look at the facts. It's not important whether we like Angela Rayner or not. It's not important whether or not we think that she's a good politician at this point. The important thing is, has she committed tax fraud? That's all that matters. If she has to resign. If she hasn't, she shouldn't. And I think from what she's said so far, if she's telling the truth, and the Ethics Commissioner will find that out, she acted reasonably, and another ordinary, reasonable person could have been expected to act in the same way. And just because it's complicated doesn't necessarily mean that she's done anything wrong.
But she has admitted that she underpaid that stamp duty bill now. So by that reckoning, if you're saying we need to establish whether she did or not, well, she's, by her own admission, she has admitted it, so surely she has to go.
Well, but that's a very, very simplistic view, Martin, because let's have a look at what happened. So she divested herself of the property in Ashton-under-Lyne in January. Since January, she has not owned that property. She bought a new property in May. Now, an ordinary person, me included, given that she has no financial stake in the Manchester house anymore, would say that the only property she owns is the one in Hove. I think that's a normal point of view. Even the tax expert, Mike Warburton, has written in the Telegraph today that he would also have considered the Hove property to be her only home. That's a tax expert. Now, it just so happens, because she has this very, very complicated arrangement where her disabled child now owns the home in trust, because he happens to be still under 18, even though she doesn't own the house from a financial point of view, from a quirk of tax law, she is said to have an interest in that home, which makes the Hove property her second home. Now, that's incredibly complex, so complex that her first lawyers got it wrong. Now, I have no reason...
Miriam, could I interject and say it's so complex, people don't care. They care about fairness. They care about rules being applied. Miriam, they care about... We're always being told by politicians that we should pay our way. Every pound we keep from the HMRC is a pound robbed from the country. That's what this looks like. And you can talk about process and complications all you like. No one cares. People see this. People see this as politicians acting in a way that would get all the rest of us in trouble. And dare I say, very magnanimous of you to step in a sisterly way, I don't know, and protect Angela Rayner. She wouldn't do the same for you. She'd be calling you scum.
That's what I don't care about, Martin, because this is not a question about whether or not she's a nice person and she behaves politely. Has she committed tax fraud? That's the only question that we should be worried about. This is exactly the point I'm making. It is lazy and frankly irresponsible to say it's complicated, therefore she must be guilty. Anyone who's ever had any tax affairs at all, run a business, tried to buy a property, tried to rent out a property, will realise how unbelievably complicated our tax and property law. Now, that's a question for another day. It needs to be simplified. But
the housing minister doesn't understand how much stamp duty she's got to pay. Come on.
Do you think Wes Streeting could take a brain tumour out? Do you think Ed Miliband could build a wind turbine? I don't.
Well, I think there's enough hot air coming out of that Miliband to power the entire country. That's a separate point. Seriously, the housing minister, just like you, just like me, just like anybody who buys a house, can go online, type in the value of a property and work out how much cash you've got to pay. It takes moments.
That's not the question, Martin. That's not the question that's being asked. The question is, was the Hove property a second home for stamp duty purposes? And that's a question that even tax experts are saying there wasn't a clear answer to because of the complexity of the arrangements of this trust. And I think we need to be reasonable. If Angela Rayner was your best friend and she said to you, well, I had this lawyer tell me one thing and I had no reason to disbelieve him, but now I've had a lawyer tell me the first lawyer was wrong, what would you say? Oh, well, tax is complicated. But the point is she's going to pay the money back, and she's referred herself to the Ethics Commissioner. And just because it's difficult does not mean she's done wrong. Now, if the Ethics Commissioner finds that her version of events is not true, that she has misled Keir Starmer or Parliament, or that she's deliberately tried to avoid tax, then of course that's different. But my point is that if we really believe in a British sense of fair play, we should give her the benefit of the doubt and not treat her badly just because we don't like her, because we enjoy public figures being brought down.
We have to leave it there. And that was the representative for the Labour Party, Miriam Cates. Only joking. Thank you for coming on, because nobody from the Labour Party would come and do that job. Miriam Cates, I really do admire your grace under fire. Always an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Miriam Cates, for joining us on the show. Now, coming up next, Nigel Farage's Reform UK boasts a double-digit poll lead as he heads into his party conference in Birmingham tomorrow. But can the man actually become the Prime Minister? This is GB News, Britain's News Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:28 with me, Martin Daubney. Now, Reform UK kick off their party's conference in Birmingham tomorrow. And this comes as Nigel Farage compared Britain to North Korea yesterday while addressing US Congress. But as the party stormed the polls, could it be make or break month for Reform UK? Well, let's speak now with the CEO of Electoral Calculus, Martin Baxter. Martin, a pleasure to have your company. I've got you on to chew over data. That's your best skill. Of course, a poll out today by JL Partners, putting Nigel Farage's Reform UK outfit on its best ever polling so far. Talk us through the numbers, Mark.
Yes, good evening, Martin. So, yes, JL Partners have Reform about 10% ahead of Labour, and that's very much in line with how we like to look at things, which is taking an average, a poll of polls. That's got Reform 9% ahead, so pretty much in the same ballpark. So Reform have been high in the polls ever since, if you remember, back to the May local elections, where they had a good performance, and there was a thought whether that was a flash in the pan, but they've held to that strong poll lead of around about 30% in the polls since those local elections. Labour have been slipping generally a little bit every month or so, and the Conservatives also not doing terribly well. So we're in the strange and kind of slightly crazy position that the combined support for Labour and the Conservative parties, those used to be the big two of British politics, is now less than 40%. So well less than half the country supports either Labour or the Conservatives. Support has gone to Reform, and of course the Greens and maybe Jeremy Corbyn's party on the left. It is a complete, almost revolution in British politics. Obviously, if there's not going to be a general election tomorrow, but if there were, and because I know you like to do these sums, if there were, then Reform would win and Nigel Farage would be likely to be the Prime Minister with, around about, 80 to 100 seats or so, depending on the breaks. But, it's and there we've got a map showing what that would look like across the country. So you see light blue really throughout many parts of England and Wales, including the Red Wall in the north, that inset off on the right-hand side with Manchester and Yorkshire and Merseyside. Only London would remain a Labour stronghold, really, with Reform nibbling at the kind of Essex edges. But Reform making progress even in the southeast of England, the southwest of England, South Wales, places not necessarily, would have been so great for UKIP in the old days, but Reform just doing very well everywhere. And I think that's, feeding in or coming from the feeling that the two big parties have failed on the issues that the British people want progress on.
Yeah, Martin Baxter, what we see there is an incredible distillation of almost London as a country within a country. It now has a completely different political makeup to almost the rest of the United Kingdom. And as you say, the Labour Party have been shoved back into inner cities across the industrial north and, of course, areas of high ethnic minorities such as Leicestershire. When we look at the analysis by JL Partners, Martin, they concluded two things. First of all, Reform UK have been the strongest voice on small boats, which people now believe is the biggest issue facing the nation. Immigration is now surpassing the economy even, certainly surpassing the NHS, Labour's strongest electoral point. And also, of course, a key difference, they put on 3% during July. And Martin, do you think that's because while the rest of the parliamentarians were putting their clogs up somewhere on a beach, Reform UK turned into campaign mode in July?
Well, I think they're right to highlight immigration as one of the top three issues for the British public, along with, as you mentioned, economy and health. Those are the top three. They interchange slightly which one's ahead in any one month, but those are the big three for the public. And I think, in my own judgment, is no political party's got an answer, a credible answer to any of those, except perhaps Reform and immigration, where they are clearly, according to polling evidence, the most trusted party on that issue. That on the economy and health, nobody seems to have a great-looking solution. It's certainly not one that's impressed the public. I suspect if Keir Starmer wants to get re-elected, he should start solving some of those issues now, and then he might, romp home to a majority. But at the moment, the left, or centre-left of politics, is divided. There's Labour, the Lib Dems, the Greens, who look like they're going to be moving left under their new leadership, plus Jeremy Corbyn and your party coming along. So Keir Starmer needs to unite the left and solve the issues facing the country. Okay. Otherwise, as you say, Nigel Farage is making hay with immigration.
OK, Martin Baxter, we have to leave it there. Of course, there'd be great news for Nigel Farage going into this party conference tomorrow in Birmingham, but of course, a long way to go. And the article itself points out there could be many pitfalls yet between now and the next general election for Reform UK. Martin Baxter, always a pleasure to have on the show. Thank you once again for joining us, my friend. Loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including we'll be debating whether Britain could be heading for an IMF bailout. Or is this simply hysteria? But for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, because schools are back, here is your traffic and your travel update. Stick with us.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Motorists should exercise caution southbound on the M74 at junction 14 due to a vehicle fire causing delays. In Leeds, an accident on the M62 eastbound between junctions 27 and 28 closes one lane. Bath and North East Somerset drivers face 15-minute delays on the A36 southbound due to congestion. Surrey's M23 northbound between junctions 9 and 8 has a lane closure from a broken-down vehicle. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway reports delays between Bedford and Luton Airport Parkway. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some very heavy rain in places today. Tomorrow, a lot calmer. The winds will be lighter, particularly in the south, and most of us will have a dry day. It's been far from that today over parts of the Midlands, northern England, but out of very heavy rain, some thunderstorms around too. It is now pulling out into the North Sea. We'll keep a few showers going through the nights, parts of Wales, western Scotland, the odd one for northwest England and Northern Ireland, but Most places will become dry, long clear spells, a bit cooler than last night as well. Temperatures, certainly rural spots, well down into single figures. So a fresh but fine start to Friday. For most of us, there'll be some sunshine around tomorrow. Still enough of a breeze to bring in a few showers coming into the Highlands and the Western Isles, maybe the Northern Isles of Scotland, but most places will have a dry and fine start. Again, the odd shower coming into the north and the west of Northern Ireland, perhaps northwest England too, but the majority for England and Wales, fine, bright start with some decent spells of sunshine, but it will be just a little bit cooler than it has been. Now, as you go through the day, some cloud will bubble up a little bit, and we'll see maybe the odd shower again developing northwest England, west coast of Wales. The cloud will increase over the Western Isles and some patchy rain is possible here late in the day. The winds lighter than today, certainly across the south you'll notice that difference, and as a result feeling quite a bit warmer. Temperatures maybe a smidge above the average, high teens generally, maybe into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. 22 is possible. High pressure promises some fine weather for most of us on Saturday, quite a warm day as well, but look at this, a deepening area of low pressure, the isobars squidging together, so quite a change for Sunday. It's going to be a weekend of two halves really, dry for most with hazy sunshine on Saturday, but for Sunday that weather system will turn things wet and windy. The humidity will be picking up through the weekend as well. That's all from me for now. Goodbye.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. It's 5:38. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has hit back at warnings that Britain could be heading for an IMF bailout, brushing off comparisons to the 1976 crisis. Rachel Reeves blasted economists for talking rubbish and insisted her budget plans alongside growth reforms would keep the country on solid economic ground. Well, should we be concerned? Well, I'm joined now by the Professor of Economics and Public Policy at King's College London, Jonathan Porters. Jonathan, always a pleasure to have your esteemed company. How bad are things and how good can they get? And is Miss Reeves right when she says it's rubbish that we're heading towards an IMF bailout?
So first of all, Rachel Reeves is clearly right that it's rubbish to talk about an IMF bailout for a number of reasons. The first and most obvious being one is that the IMF simply doesn't bail out large advanced economies like the UK. That's just not how modern capital markets work. So I think she's quite, no serious economist is talking seriously about the prospect of an IMF bailout. And if anybody does, frankly, if anyone, you or any one of your viewers wants to make a bet with me, I'll give you pretty good odds that there's not going to be an IMF bailout within the next year or two in the UK. But of course, that doesn't mean that we don't face some pretty serious economic issues, as you and your viewers know. And it is likely that while the so-called black hole is not nearly as big, probably not nearly going to be as big as some forecasts suggest, there are likely going to have to be tax rises and or spending cuts in the budget. So, I mean, that is the bottom line. So there's no getting around that.
It's interesting, I had Kwasi Kwarteng on Farage last night. I asked him if he felt we're going for an IMF bailout. He said no. Of course, he agreed with you. But I did put to him, I'd like to put to you now, of course, the Labour Party like to look back on the crash of Trussonomics, crashing in the economy, blaming Liz Truss, and yet the gilt yields now are worse than under Liz Truss. The economic bellwethers are looking worse. Do you think the Labour Party should stop blaming the past and look themselves in the mirror?
Well, I think, what we saw under Truss was this very, very sharp rise in gilt yields. The markets literally panicked as a result of her lunatic budget. And that happened in a very short order. What we've had here is a slow rise in yields that mostly, not entirely, but mostly has paralleled what's happened elsewhere. And indeed, if you look at the markets today, UK gilt yields have actually fallen back a reasonable amount. And that's not actually anything to do with what's happened in the UK. It's primarily because the US economy is looking somewhat weaker, and that tends to reduce bond yields. So there is a lot going on. I do agree, while the Truss episode was, frankly, pretty catastrophic, it is in the past. We are now where we are now, and we have a new government, a Labour government, and you're quite right. It's their responsibility to run the economy. And really talking about what happened a couple of years ago, whatever you think of what happened then, doesn't really address the problems we're facing now.
And Jonathan Portes, when I spoke to Kwasi Kwarteng last night about the date of the autumn budget, November the 26th is the last possible date it could legally run. And he said that's because the Chancellor is scared, terrified of the options, no good options coming forward, and likely a heck of a lot of pain for the British taxpayer at a time where we have a housing minister who appears to be not paying her fair share, 40 grand in stamp duty. It could potentially be a nightmare for Rachel Reeves on November the 26th and for the taxpayer.
I mean, my recollection is that budgets have quite often been in late November, that when I, a long time ago, used to have some involvement in the budget process, it was quite often. So I don't think that's unusual. I don't know why it's so late. And it's not impossible that, as you say, she's trying to put off some of the pain or hope that things will turn up. A more optimistic reading might be that actually the Treasury and the government need time to think through what a proper tax strategy and economic strategy would look like. So instead of doing what some previous chancellors have done, which is sort of just tinker around the edges, a little bit here, a little bit there, there'll be some more fundamental reform of property taxation or wealth taxation, which could in the long run be positive for the UK economy. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, I like your glass half full attitude, nothing else. Thank you very much for joining us, Jonathan Portes.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you. Coming up next, shocking new Home Office data seen exclusively by GB News has shown that 40% of all asylum seekers claiming to be unaccompanied children, well, they're actually adults. Some are as old as 30. Is it time to deport them all? But before that, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Whilst it's feeling pretty autumnal across the UK at the moment, it's a different story across southern Europe. Lots of places having generally fine, often sunny and still pretty warm weather. That being said, across some eastern parts of Spain tomorrow, it's looking quite damp, and we do still have some heavy thundery rain across parts of northern Italy into Switzerland and Austria, even some snow over the Alps. Otherwise, like I said, lots of fine weather to be had, and that's the theme as we go through the weekend into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Jeremy Clarkson is being praised for his role in inspiring the next generation of farmers. His documentary shows the ups and downs of British farm life, and now the Royal Agricultural University in Gloucestershire has credited it with a rise in applications. Good stuff, eh? We can now speak with the agriculture student at Gloucestershire's Hartpury University, Joseph Watkins. Joseph, thank you so much for joining me. What a scene you've got there. Do you think it's going to inspire another generation? You're a young man yourself. Has it inspired you at all?
For anyone watching, it's just amazing to see, isn't it? All the different steps they take, all the different revenues which they can create on farm. So I think it's really good for the public. And if it does something to help get people into the industry, I think that's an amazing thing. Agriculture has both a lack of skilled talent and just a lack of people in the industry anyway. So if someone wants to go and do a college course or university course to get into the agriculture industry because they watch Jeremy Clarkson, this old pot-bellied Top Gear man, then I think it's great. And I say that with all due respect. I love Top Gear.
Well, we were talking about the ups and downs of farm life. What are the first of all, let's start with the ups. What are the ups?
They're pretty beautiful ladies, you know, surrounded by 600 lovely ladies. That's certainly something. Working outside, you know, you're working with your hands. It's definitely a rewarding experience to be able to go home after a long day and think, right, everything's taken care of. All of these cows are all happy. Some of the downs, well, it's difficult, isn't it? You've heard this, I'm sure you know. The family farm tax has been in the news lately. But the early mornings, late nights, being away from friends and family, strenuous jobs, and often at times dangerous. So there's ups and downs to it, but as you can see now, I think the positives outweigh the negatives for me.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:48 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, new Home Office data seen exclusively by GB News has shown that astonishingly 40% of all asylum seekers claiming to be unaccompanied children are actually adults. Some of them are as old as 30. Well, today I'm asking, is it time to biometrically age all asylum seekers and deport the so-called fake children? Now, let's go through some of the data. I've got a couple of charts to show you here. These are from our friends at standforoursovereignty.org. Why do they fake it? Well, here's some insight. They have a significantly higher chance of getting asylum granted if they claim to be under 18. There's an 84% approval rate for those who claim to be under 18. 50% more likely to be granted asylum if you say you're an unaccompanied child. Now, here's the money shot. Let's get to the next point. Look at this. An incredible 40% of all people, asylum seekers, who claim to be children are not children. They're over 18. Some of them are as old as 30. Some of them have full beards, hairy chests and receding hairlines. And yet they're sat in classrooms with 15-year-old Brits. It's an absolute farce. It's the asylum scandal of the year, and that's saying something. Let's talk about it now with my next guest, the immigration lawyer, Shoaib Khan. Mr. Khan, always a pleasure. This is an absolute joke. And it quite simply says to us, like other European nations who do this, it's time to biometrically age everybody and anybody coming into this country. Enough is enough. No more, I'm 16, Governor, even though I haven't got a passport because I threw it in the channel. This is an utter farce.
I think, the fact we have these figures and we do have age disputes and the Home Office carry out assessments, social services is involved, all sorts of assessments we have. I think it shows that the system is in place and the system does work. So it's not about, this is my age, Governor, you have to believe me. Obviously, we have tests, we have assessments. But we need to have a limit on how intrusive and basically how inhumane the system can be. And so I think the system, as we have it, that's the whole point of the system, that we can find out if someone is an adult or not, and we do that. But obviously the point is, I mean, many times, as in many cases, the Home Office gets it wrong. The Home Office will doubt that someone is an adult, but they end up being a child. They treat them as adults, then they put them in detention centres, and for months, weeks, they are treated.
And that, Shoaib Khan, is precisely why we should accurately biometrically age everybody. So there's no namby-pambying about. They do it in Austria. They do it in Switzerland. They do it in a great many nations. You can simply X-ray your wrist bone. It's not invasive. It's not inhumane. It's scientific and it works. And it would end this asylum nonsense.
But we already have those systems in place. Not those exact systems, maybe.
We don't.
But the point is, but we have psychiatric tests, psychological tests. We have social.
That's not the same thing. They can be faked. People can lie. They often lie. They're clearly lying. 40% of them are proven to be adults.
Well, firstly, one thing just to clarify is not 40% of total claims made, but it's 40% of age disputes. So in cases where the age was disputed,
so
40% of those.
So the true figure will be actually more. And I'll tell you why the true figure will be actually more, because there was a case where a Sudanese refugee claimed to be 16. He was actually biometrically aged as 23. He took it to the Supreme Court and they found in his favour. He had receding hairline. He had hairy legs. He had a full beard. He'd been aged as 23, and yet judges said, oh, no, he must be 16 because the asylum seeker said so. It's nonsense. Let's get scientific, let's get exact, and let's end this asylum charade.
That's not what the Supreme Court said, that just because the asylum seeker said so. The point is, like I'm saying, either we accept, which I don't, that our whole social services is based on some farce. Our social workers don't know what they're doing. Our councils don't know what they're doing. The Home Office has no idea what it's doing. So either that's what we say, which I don't think the case is. The case is these are obviously qualified people. They know what they're doing. It's their area of expertise. Let's just let them get on with it. And of course, like you said, and like this study shows, obviously these people, if they are lying, then they get caught out. So I just don't understand what the problem is. And it's as if saying, if some people are lying, then the whole system must be corrupt. The whole system is wrong. I just don't understand that point of view, really.
OK, well, I tried to make it crystal clear, and that is if we make it scientific, if we make it irrefutable, if we make it so there's no grey area, there's like, honest gov, I'm 16, even though I've got a receding hairline and hairy legs and a full beard. That's the point. There'd be no ambiguity. Shoaib Khan, we have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much indeed. Talk of no ambiguity, the best primetime show on television, Jubes & Co. is up next. The queen of primetime debate, the legend herself, Michelle Druby, is up next. Jubes, what's on your menu?
Thanks for that. Well, as you've just rightly been reporting earlier on in your programme, the illegal migrant in Epping, then, at the centre of those protests, has of course been found guilty. Well, I shall be taking you live over to Epping in my programme, where you guessed it, protests set to remain. What do you make to it all? I also want to look, as you was pointing out as well, Martin, about The Guardian. How dare you still call people that don't want men like this next to their kids far right? See you in a sec.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some very heavy rain in places today. Tomorrow, a lot calmer. The winds will be lighter, particularly in the south, and most of us will have a dry day.